Our story begins with our protagonist already in a beautiful limbo, but in this limbo, our protagonist starts to hear some voices in his mind. These voices asked if he believed in destiny. Well, if he didn't believe, it wouldn't change much. Well, it would change a little, because if our protagonist chose one thing, he would have one more thing to fight against some different beasts. However, his final direction would be different from what he was used to, but he still keeps falling. Unlike others, people wouldn't believe it easily, but he didn't believe it. But that voice ends up saying that it didn't matter what choice our protagonist made, because all the same choices he made at that moment would lead him to the same destiny. That thing holding our protagonist in that unknown limbo ends up releasing him. And today I bring you a story where our protagonist ended up with our cliff, but in exchange, he ended up gaining that system everyone dreams of. At that moment, he hears a scream. This scream was from a girl who saw a monster approaching while her companions fled, asking her to flee as well, but it didn't help. She was devoured. The monsters ran, and the humans around there ran, asking for help. The beasts with human faces in their vision were very scary, and they asked for these scary things not to come near them, but it didn't help. While running there, they realized they reached a point where they couldn't proceed any further, because now they faced our protagonist on the cliff. They needed to find a way to survive. The only way was to hide behind some rocks, but it didn't help. The monster was giant and could see them, but they hid quite well behind those rocks and hoped everything would go right. If it didn't go right, they had no choice but to jump off that cliff. But then, the first to be discovered by this creature, wished from the bottom of her soul that this monster with a human face wouldn't find her. However, she ends up feeling a drop of something falling on her arms. At that moment, she starts trembling with fear and gets scared, but looking ahead, that deformed human face appears right in front of her. Seeing this unknown girl, it simply opens its mouth, and she was about to be devoured, but still begged to be spared. She didn't want to die, but it didn't help. That thing ends up dragging her up while she suffers her last moments. We can see from behind some rocks, our protagonist watching this ghost devouring the last human left there, but now he wondered, what was the point of having this? But the test was supposed to be beginner level. In our protagonist's view, they weren't strong people, but the beginner level tests were much more advanced. Ignoring the ghost, our protagonist puts his arm in front and starts to comment that by managing to change jobs, he could complete it automatically, as long as he could survive in this place for just 5 minutes. But the normal people around here were being eliminated one by one, and he feared for some reason that it would be quite difficult. Survive, even if it's just for a few minutes there. The last humans end up being devoured and our possible next protagonist, Jiang Kai, is passing through the novice test on this planet called Devil S Star, a phantom star. This is a huge star that approached the planet Earth of our protagonist more than 50 years ago. When that train appeared out of nowhere in front of our protagonist world, they didn't even notice something starting to happen in the face of this. They began to live a fairly normal life. Humans lived somewhat normal lives, but the plants and animals of the worlds living on our protagonist's planet suddenly began to transform into monsters, earning them the title, Gods of Beasts. These are the monsters that can wreak havoc on the entire world, ultimately destroying everything. Humans ran to save themselves. This so-called God of the Beast is something that human technology has not yet managed to resist. Bombs and weapons had no effect on these monsters. Their appearances pushed humanity directly toward a certain direction. That direction being extinction. There was no salvation for humans in this world. However, during this period of pure despair, the humans, who managed to survive, discovered some certain things. By using them, they gained powers that changed our protagonist world considerably. These humans, upon noticing some strange portals appearing in front of them, began to enter them. As the humans passed through the teleportation matrix to another place, they could be teleported to a digital format, Phantom Star. Soon after being teleported to this place, he is surprised by the place they arrived. The humans then discovered that they had managed to reach the Phantom Star, and there they discovered many things. One of these things was that Ghost Star seemed to be a digital world, not a real one, as giant monsters and giant natures were basically surreal in their views. But the humans, who entered there, began to explore here. Humans could apply for jobs, to obtain various different professions. In this world you could become a knight, a wizard, or even a regular human, but all have a numerical value. This thing will allow the person to evolve more their skills and equipment within this game character, and they will be able to earn many attributes to level up their own status. He ended up discovering that if the Phantom Star is upgraded to a certain level, you can sort of transcend to a surreal power, and with that, you can possibly return to Earth. But many choose to have these powers to fight monsters. With the help of this power, people who had the power in the Phantom world managed to return to the real world as well, but they returned with the power. With these powers, they managed to make their real world as strong as the Phantom world. The monsters that appeared in this world could be dealt with by a simple sword movement. But to get their powers, you will need to go through situations quite risky to survive. And if you manage to obtain, let's say, a little bit of that Ghost Star power, you'll have everything, but you'll have to go through challenges. And one of them failed. This creature ended up kind of possessing this weak human. Meanwhile, our protagonist stayed just behind a rock there, just observing, and now he has discovered that he is the only survivor around. But now he had no way to escape anymore, because everyone was dragged up, and the monster behind them already appeared. But our boy, who was totally injured, had no way to escape, and the monster was about to attack him. He didn't want to exist. He just came here to gain power. This is the reason for entering this ghost star, and our protagonist doesn't want to enter a completely new world like this, just to return dead, because if our protagonist returns empty-handed to his world, he will be sad because his sister and brother were left behind. They both did their best to survive in this world. We also find out that our protagonist's sister suffered a little to make our protagonist enter this ghost star. Her brother also suffered a lot. He worked hard for our protagonist to at least get in there, and he wouldn't make his siblings work that hard there. No, our protagonist wanted to do the most possible to survive, and moreover, if he doesn't get the job change, he will be wasting the economy that his family saved suffering there. So, that monster prepares and that spear he had in hand just throws towards our protagonist. Our protagonist just observes that spear approaching, but he ended up thinking of a way to survive. Instead of just standing there waiting for his death to come, he decides to run, but he runs in another direction. This direction is towards our cliff. Sand type. Our true Sand manages to make the character be sent to another world and gain that rack. And then, if he jumps from the mountain, maybe something could be happening to him. So he simply jumps, but even jumping, he is still hit by that spear, but he has already achieved what he wanted. Now it is facing him. He turns, but now turning, he here now is the only chance for our boy to survive here and get a new job there. So he falls, and that monster just kept looking at our boy falling. And there, while falling, he just looked up. Looking up, he sees the face of Beauty looking at him, but he still hasn't given up, wanted, basically to try to survive this fall. But it was at this moment that whistle appeared there. The system appears to our protagonist in his vision. There our protagonist looking up, notices something different happening. He managed to survive this monster in exchange. So how did he manage to survive? He ended up awakening a hidden career. Our boy, who there only saw the ugly face of that monster, now saw something superior to that. But now our protagonist ends up receiving those congratulations from the system. The system ended up saying that our protagonist finally completed his job change. Now he unlocked a hidden profession, which he just needs to accept. Now in front of him, a world begins to appear, and shortly after, some data appears alongside it. But the system arrived at a good moment for our protagonist is saved. Then he simply faints, but minutes later, he wakes up. Now he finds himself in front of a gigantic forest, but upon opening his eyes, our protagonist sees that he is still alive. However, looking to the side, he can see the stake from that monster that attacked him. Now he tries to assess the situation he is in, whether he is well or not. But then he gets up, starts looking at his wound. But looking at his wound, he is surprised, because there is nothing there. Just a moment ago, he fell from the cliff, but the wounds from just now have completely disappeared. So he wonders how he was healed. Then a new prompt appears in front of our protagonist. This thing connected to the system there. So our protagonist sees a new thing happening in this short space of time. A girl appears there, ending up telling our protagonist that, because he managed to change jobs successfully, his attributes and basic attributes were updated. What this means is that our protagonist kind of died, but came back to life. Now everything was basically like this for his life and everything there. She floated towards our protagonist, but he ended up asking her a question. He just asked if she was some kind of AI brain that only existed in the ghost star. But at this moment, he is totally ignored by the system. At this moment, the system starts commenting on a new thing that our protagonist unlocked. This was the double talent. So our protagonist, he would receive a reward, but at the same time a punishment. But the system would be doing a thing there. It would be duplicating that thing. There would be a 100% chance that an effect that was active there would be duplicated, maybe by 10% or more than that, if he receives a reward from the system that will be duplicated. And as he just unlocked a kind of ability now, the system is now, at this moment, duplicating the talent of our protagonist. So he will be gaining 2 talents. And at this moment, that talent of our protagonist is duplicated. The big boy is already happy there. He realizes that he now has 2 talents, but now he wonders if, by changing jobs, he would have a chance to have 2 jobs at this moment. The system answers, yes. Now his new talent is simple. It will be duplicating our protagonist's damage. Now his damage will increase 200 times more than he has. Our protagonist is already quite happy with that. The total attributes of a normal person after changing jobs usually stay around 20 points. But our protagonist was surprised to see that has reached 36. But the system already answers him that this was thanks to the talent duplicator that could be duplicating twice the points that our protagonist will also be receiving. So in this case, our protagonist realizes that by updating the ghost star in the future, a normal person will be receiving 10 attribute points, but our protagonist will already be receiving 20 points in double, and then his current level will be much higher than other people's, and he will be much stronger than anyone else in the future. But also, our protagonist has a second talent, critical hit. The critical hit of a normal person only causes twice the damage of their opponent, but of our protagonist causes 200 times more damage, and although the critical hit rate is only a 1,000th increase, our boy is already thrilled. Clenching his fists, he realizes that he might also be increasing the critical hit rate currently. His future damage will be much more than scary. Our guy is even happier to perceive that people in the future will sort of respect him. Anyway, the one in front of him is that weapon used by the beast with the human face just a while ago. So our protagonist just wanted to be using it since he managed to change jobs currently. Now that he has, he will start evolving, because he came to this world to earn a lot of money for his brother's surgery. And now, no matter how weak his profession is in the Phantom Star, he can still make money there. But he didn't expect that he would accidentally awaken two types of talents at the same time, and that allowed him to become an extremely powerful guy. But as he stops to think, maybe he can reach the value of his brother's surgery expenses as soon as possible, thus allowing his family to have a decent life. But at this moment, he looks at his system, because now he needs to complete the job transfer test. This was just the first step. The next thing to do was to reach a certain destination. The current location he's in is below, but his destination is Lenabeo. But right now, he needs to complete this objective, and after that, he could be completing the beginner tests. So he uses his fastest speed. He flies like a lightning bolt. He also needed to reach Shingwa City in 7 days. But for our hero, this will be easy. His speed was very fast, but it would be very difficult to achieve this thing. First, the test area is full of monsters that are very strong, and if he slacks off, he ends up dying, and the test he was doing would not be worth it anymore. Everything he did here would be in vain, because before he was defeated, he would be sent to the Earth, but he won't allow this. Even if he ends up dying in the Phantom Star, he won't suffer any damage here when he returns to Earth. But even if you return to Earth, you still have that chance to return to this world. However, you need to be extremely rich, and that's something he isn't, so he needed to be careful all the time. Entering the Phantom Star requires a lot of money, and rich people can take the test once or twice or 3 times, since the poor, at this moment, basically need to spend their entire lives trying to pass for the first time in these tests and still have a chance to fail. But at this moment, he gets scared, because in the background, he hears a scream in the middle of that forest. Our protagonist starts running towards the noise to try to find out what that noise was, but getting a little closer, he ends up discovering that this noise was a little familiar to him. So he thinks this could be that something was happening, and he heads in the direction of that noise. There a serpent flies with its mouth wide open, but it's too much of a macho with a punch. He ends up smashing that thing, but well, he ends up asking those snakes not to come near. She, all shy, ends up saying she was afraid of that thing there. She remembers that he fought in the most manly form of the world. It was his longtime friend, and Juicy. He fought against those snakes. He saw that even though Juicy fought with all his might, he wouldn't be able to defeat those snakes, because at the moment, he was surrounded by them, and he had a bit of bad luck at this moment here. These snakes are completely poisonous. Just one bite from them is enough to send him dragging up, and what he's facing at the moment are 3 of them. He ends up asking him to stay calm because he would be able to win. But turning around, he sees someone coming and shouting for him to chill out a bit, because now our hero comes there to save his friend's life. He held that piece of wood in hand, and our hero, who held it quite firmly, saw him going full steam ahead, against those creatures, but the snakes wouldn't let go of his friend's foot. They approached, and at this moment, one of those snakes was about to bite him, but he, all shy, was happy to know that his friend hadn't forgotten about him, and hadn't left him alone. He comments that these snakes have very high attributes and are extremely venomous. Beginners like them basically have a chance of not being able to defeat these creatures. Not until easy like that. Only this wasn't for our hero with that in hand, who ended up saying, not to worry. Then he grabs that spear he had in hand and throws it with all his might in the direction of that snake behind. The snake that was about to bite him ends up being hit head on. He, who had this, doesn't understand how he got that strength out of nowhere, but then he turns around and sees the snake falling mouth first on that spear of our hero. He even realizes that our protagonist managed to send the first snake up. But our protagonist asks him not to relax, because it's not over yet, and then he realizes that he can use his friend Zoom as bait at this moment. And he can use him so that those snakes could be chasing his friend to catch him. But behind our hero, that spear in hand would be nailing those attacks. Good on those snakes, but his disappointment ends up coming there, because after defeating that first snake, the Juzi ended up kind of realizing that who was the strongest. There was no longer his friend of R2, so they simply start walking towards him. His friend saw that things were going to a bad side. These snakes have very high agility, and it was almost impossible to dodge that. But for our protagonist, it wasn't either. He ends up putting his hands down. He ends up giving some claws there, but with his legs up, he simply hits the first snake squarely. He's soon seeing his friend kick over those snakes. Ends up being surprised. Opening his mouth, he saw how it was possible to dodge an attack from that snake there easily. But to understand this, our door comments that his attributes were doubled after the job change. He realizes that the attributes and agility at level 1 are basically the same as level 2, and also, as expected, these level 1 snakes couldn't keep up with our protagonist's speed. So he now grabs that spear that was stuck in the mouth of that snake. Now he pulls out that spear and asks Yuzi to keep drawing the attention of those snakes, because our hero behind would already be taking care of those little creatures. As he was prevented, he ended up putting a rack in his hand now. He would be taking care of the monsters he lands the blows, but no effect arises. However, to end the lives of the snakes, our hero simply plunges that spear into them. Those snakes then end up all falling defeated on the ground. Our hero, there does some hero poses, but his friend again, gets wide-eyed. He ends up realizing that, even using all his power, he managed to distract the snakes a little bit, but didn't even manage to hurt one of them. His friend ended up sending them all to F. But here the system appears in front of our protagonist. He realizes that even killing these snakes, he realizes that his current profession was very low already. This was affecting his strength and agility, but for some reason, he really managed to cause a little damage enough to send those level 1 monsters dragging upwards instantly. But that was already good for him. He thinks that this iron spear in hand would be able to kill all the monsters even more. He was lucky to be able to get that spear of iron from those monsters with human faces, because soon after he collected that spear, he realized that his strength and also area damage increased a lot. The force in this world that our prey is basically the attack of the ghost star. But his friend already sticks behind our protagonist, and with those weird little talks, he ends up thanking our hero for being able to send those snakes up there. For him being the beginner, he would have died if by chance he had not been saved by our protagonist. So he thanks our protagonist. He owes something to our protagonist. He could charge anyway, but does not support refusal, because he ended up kind of lucky, because he managed to complete his job change and got a player profession. But he asks his friend not to go out there telling everyone that he got this. But he is surprised to see that his friend really got what he wanted so much, to be a player. But well, he doesn't understand what a player really is. He just agrees that our protagonist got a good profession. Only that, not wanting to belittle our PR, he also comments that he got a pretty good profession. The system already appears in front of our PR. He ends up finding out that his friend got the martial art. This is a very powerful art, and our protagonist is surprised to see that his friend got a very good thing, because this profession that he ended up unlocking is ranked in the 5th place in the Kingdom of Divine Glory. Something that not even anyone can get. But how many professions exist in the Ghost Star, our protagonist? And no one in this world knows. But the first thing that all explorers who want to try to pass and enter the Ghost Star and manage to pass, he ends up getting the job change. As to the type of profession that you, this will depend on the material and the change of work that you bought before you started logging into the Ghost Star. This depends, could come good things or bad things. But usually the rich will spend millions and millions to get first-hand materials, so that later they can get the best jobs there. And already, in this way, they manage to get the strongest professions. When they get to the Ghost Star, they can first-hand get martial arts, like your friend there just got, or maybe might be awakening as the paladin. But there's also the assassin class that's extremely rare, also if you manage to get its pure luck, or just being rich, because there's a chance to get the good stuff. But now looking to the other side, the poor. The poor might be managing to buy small materials for changing jobs that are worthless. Type the cheapest material, and the professions you get with them are extremely weak, like getting the profession of drunk, which I don't know if it's effective literally from that in real life. Good for some things, or you can also get the beggar class. The professions are randomly assigned to the user, but you need 50 million to awaken this martial arts class. Our next almost thinks he went to a shop with a smiley face. He says, no. He ends up telling me, it's a long story, and then he would tell everything to our protagonist. Right, actually, in the Ghost Star, you can exchange any loot you get for money, and he's planning to help his family with money he'll be getting from the loot of this Ghost Star. He can take the materials or rest or ores. Everything has to trade for money. Only he can also be collecting items from the Ghost Stars. While collecting that, our protagonist can be using it as equipment. They basically turn into cards, and after you've done all that trading, you can be sort of exchanging that for something, or you can just be selling your items for a decent amount of money. Our guy keeps that item, that is that snake, inside his inventory, but the player profession is based on fighting some stronger beasts. Only that, however, getting martial arts was something no one would get easy. But his friend ended up looking at a point. Only looking at this point, someone there who was inside the bush ends up talking to them. Our protagonist's friend already sticks behind him. Only our black ends up shouting to the person who was hidden showed up. She then appears. She introduces herself as Su Ai. She was basically going through some difficulties, is managing to pass the tests alone, so she didn't want to die for nothing, and she just asks them to let her join their team. Only our next apologized, because they wouldn't be able to survive there for long anymore. They were alone, and besides, if they took her along with them, they would have difficulty. However, our PR's friend already feels relieved to know that she was just a new explorer. Only she approaches our hero, and there she comments that she didn't want to be alone. Besides, she comments that her profession is healer, and then she could take care of our protagonist's wounds. Because, if on the way there, you manage to find other snakes like these, and if by chance, you get bitten by one of them, could she heal them easily? So she ends up asking you to let her follow them. Already says that she was a good person to join his team, because besides healing, she gave buffs. So our black guy starts thinking that having a healer in the group was lucky, as it was one of the high-level professions, and it was almost impossible to get one. He ends up thinking that he will need her healing. Right from the start, he almost kicked the bucket against those monsters with human faces, but if he hadn't had the luck to escape and recover his health completely, he would already be dead. So he ends up thinking he should accept her, then approaches her and introduces himself as Jiang Kai, and he and his friend, our young Juzi, accept her warmly into their team. She just thanks them, but our friend of our protagonist already sticks close to our big guy and senses that there were other reasons for letting her join the team so quickly. Comments that this wasn't what he thought. But at the same time, on Earth, at one of the portals where our Silver possibly entered, we observe more deeply a place. This data research laboratory. One of the guys was researching something, and here he ends up discovering that the watches currently created were too incredible. They managed to sort of locate all the explorers inside the Ghost Star without even losing one logo. Then a stranger appears from behind. She comments that, of course, it was a good option to put these watches in hand, because it would help people a lot, as that watch was considered the wristwatch with the most functions in this land here. Then she asked the professor what was happening with the newcomers inside. And furthermore, she asks if his sister was okay inside that ride Su Lanlin. But this one who just appeared here was one of the inspectors of the initial tests, and based on the GPS location of the beginner's wristwatch, most of them were dragged upwards, but there were only a few people left. Our Su Ai, who is the sister of our Su Lanlin here, and some other people who weren't worth talking about. She is surprised at the moment. She was surprised because her sister, for some reason, managed to join a team, because she always found her sister too cowardly, and specifically, she never remembered seeing her sister with other players. But there's a point that no one has commented on yet, that the more people gather in a specific corner of the initial row, something starts happening. That thing was the monsters. The creatures end up kind of finding them much easier inside that giant forest. We can see the three of them standing there, but soon some of the monsters appear behind them. The monsters were only eyeing them, and as mentioned before, the probability of being found by these monsters was much easier. And the monsters are now three, and they three end up surrounding our hero's group. Our hero and our Su Ai, along with her friend, get ready because they already knew they should be preparing to fall into the hands of these ugly creatures. But minutes before we can see our Su Lanlin there beside the professor. The professor comments, 2 monsters with human faces appeared next to your sister, who is our Su Ai. Then she realizes that monsters with human faces could destroy the novices, and facing them, our AI have no chance of surviving. The death in the Ghost Star is only equivalent to the death of characters in the game, but it does not cause any physical damage on Earth. However, the experience is very real, and has caused great psychological damage to people. Those who died from these creatures never wanted to enter that world again. Some even went a bit crazy seeing that things could get worse. Your little sister might have a rather bad fate. She asks her sister to prepare a bit as she would be going to them. But then the teacher calls our pink-haired brunette and comments that our AI will not die so soon. She is surprised, because at that moment, the teacher points to the monitor and comments that the monsters with human faces were in front of those hunters there, and near her sister, they were all killed. The people watching the novice players couldn't believe it, and she asks how this was possible. But returning 3 minutes later, we can see those 2 monsters with human faces. The creatures start running at full speed towards the hunters. They don't waste any time. Our friend runs asking for this train to let go of his foot. The pink-haired brunette asked the same. she just wanted to get rid of these monsters with human faces. But while running, our protagonist saw that these creatures were very agile, and whether he liked it or not, they would catch up sooner or later. So at this moment, our protagonist ends, and here he shouts for Juicy, his friend, to run first, along with the pink-haired brunette. He would stay behind, but his friend didn't want to. He asks him to follow, but it didn't help. Our protagonist ends up holding his spear as tightly as he can in his hand. He would try to hold off these creatures as long as possible. If they stayed behind, sooner or later, they would be caught and someone would have to stay behind. So at this point, our man now holds that spear and now runs with all his might towards them. He at least wanted to take down one of those monsters with a human face. So as he jumped at the monster with a human face, he thrust that spear he held in his hand with all his strength into the creature's body. He even thought he had won, but the creature just gives him a dry slap on the side of his head. He uses the spear to defend himself, but it doesn't help much. The monster with a human face simply throws our protagonist against the wall. Now against the wall, our protagonist realizes that these monsters with human faces seem to have more life than usual, so he wouldn't be able to push the train forward with just a single attack. Now fallen on the ground, he saw it approaching him, and he couldn't do anything more. The creatures would now do whatever they want. Thought his end was here. This is something he didn't want to happen to it, because he had come this far. Dying would be sad. The pink-haired brunette is worried, but more so is his friend, who is trembling. However, he wanted to test his strength to the maximum. He had mastered martial arts, the strongest thing. Lost entirely in his thoughts, we can see a chat running on the ground in an area where ordinary people live, but they are low-income people. Soon, we observe an extremely happy person thanking a stranger for giving her son the materials that would be extremely difficult to get. However, she comments that he ended up kind of setting an extremely high expectation on Arjuzi, because it seems he discovered that Arjuzi had something extra inside him. But approaching this stranger, she comments that even if he comes face to face with those monsters on that phantom star, he would definitely be fleeing. But this was what he thought, because this one comments that ordinary people are quite weak, but the cowards, who stay in the battlefield, are quite cunning, and they can basically escape any danger. But he noticed that this guy is extremely strong, but he becomes extremely strong when he is scared. So he just needs to be in a situation where a friend of his would be in danger, and at this moment, he will never let his friend suffer. So at this point, he starts shouting, and now he asks those ugly things to let go of his friend. Then he jumps on them with a punch, and he manages to throw those two monsters with human faces backward, and they end up falling back. They are then surprised by the strength of this human, who just appeared. Then, facing our MC, he comments that last time he protected him when he was the most lost. So now, in return, he will now be protecting our protagonist. At this moment, he then turns and comments that they are basically almost brothers, and letting him die here would be a tragedy. Moreover, he has some brothers on Earth, and he needs to return alive. Our MC can't believe his potential, and at this moment, he starts preparing again. Now with the punch ready, he ends up simply punching in the direction of those two monsters that were in front of him. The punch he prepared lands on the belly of that monster. He manages to slam the face and body of this creature hard into the ground. The ground starts to crack, emanating a strong shockwave in the direction of our protagonist. He defends himself, and he thinks at this point that his friend was different. Moreover, he asks if he would be capable of defeating those monsters with human faces in one attack. The answer is no, but there he stands over that completely battered creature. At this point, he asks if this was the control of martial arts, but now he starts to feel something happening to him. It was healing. He then turns to the side and sees our AI using her healing on our protagonist. But here our MC is surprised, because he discovered her profession before was combat, but now she can heal at the same time. But here she asks our protagonist to relax. After all, she was a healer, and she would not leave our protagonist behind either. She aims to help the wounded, and no matter how scary this world is, she cannot leave. At that time, her own father faced these monsters and fought a hard battle against the waves of monsters. In the end, he ended up. Back then she also aimed to help the wounded, and no matter how scary this world was, and she couldn't leave at that time. Her own father stood up against these monsters and fought a hard battle against the waves of monsters. In the end, he ended up being dragged up fighting against this train. The reason he died was because there wasn't even a single healer in the group. She cried while saying that her companions didn't deserve to suffer there in vain. Since the group could have had a healer like her, that would serve as support for them there. She uses a little extra strength in her healing, along with her tears, and heals our protagonist completely. At that moment, our protagonist, who was at 10% HP, sees his HP rising to 100%, and his wounds are fully healed. But now that he is healed, he really shouldn't be afraid of death anymore. Now he should fight against these creatures as fast as possible, but he should also join the fight there now, because monsters with human faces were not something easy to deal with. But before he could go all out, he ends up remembering some things. This was from our Su AI, who pointed towards that poisonous serpent that our protagonist defeated before. She mentioned that if collected, she could somehow put that type of venom that the poisonous snake had on our protagonist weapon, making his weapon stronger. So since our AI said he would be doing her the favor of collecting it, but now in the present, our protagonist shows that serpent to her and tells her to use her powers to combine the venom with his spear so he could attack. She uses her powers to make the combination happen, and after a while, trying to put it on the tip of the spear, it ends up being applied. Now he will have a chance to possibly defeat this monster. Meanwhile, our MC watched his friend running towards the monsters with all his might, but Su AI commented that she could barely withstand a punch from this monster, so the friend of our protagonist should be hurrying too. But even though his attacks might not be enough to take down these human-faced monsters, our AI would be the healer of the group. Right, she could be giving those good buffs while her group attacked. Our healer from afar was taking care of our tank and our MC, so they would possibly never suffer too much damage there. But the venom extraction that our protagonist asked AI to put on the spear of our protagonist ended up being completed soon. So he had to start fighting. Then he starts running towards the monster. Now, this beast that defeated the weaklings will be defeated. This point, approaching our Juicy, he just asks his friend to throw this monster in his direction, so he can try his luck. He says it's no problem. Then, using his strongest fist, he simply says that in this battle, the three of them could combine their abilities to defeat this creature. So he punches the creature in the face, managing to stun it, allowing our MC to strike from there. And in this way, even if it is known as killer monsters of novices, they would be defeated by these mere simple humans. Any here in our plan then ends up jumping. Now he was facing these monsters with human faces. The little creature was looking at our black spear with its mouth wide open. Since before they were the prey, not the hunter. The prey and our protagonist then start putting that spear all the way inside it. It couldn't handle the size of that thing, but it needed to endure. So with all its might, it ends up shoving it all in there. It kind of causes an explosion afterward. The system then appears right after, commenting that our protagonist killed a monster with a human face. His level went up to level 2, and the accumulated experience value was 5. Now our protagonist and his group are already celebrating. Su AI is more than happy, because she saw they managed to defeat this creature. Now they could be happy. What they need now is maybe to try to get out of this place where they are. If they will succeed, I still don't know. But for that, they would have to finally finish dealing with the last one left there. Right, one they already defeated, but another not. This one was standing. This one, seeing the groups preparing to attack them again, begins to prepare to run. They run and then start using their magic to attack them from behind. Su AI already uses her healing magic to give that basic support to our MC. And our hero, along with his friend, manages to go after them. They collide there. But from another place, we can observe our Su Lanlin, who still didn't understand what was happening, and she wanted to see the transmission on the watch there, but was managing to see everything that was happening, to see if they really managed to deal with two monsters, known as beginner killers. Moreover, how two newly arrived in this area could manage to do that. So this professor starts commenting that actually, according to the watch data, they are using their strategy to their advantage. They wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So they end up using the warrior strategy to make him stronger. His team now wasn't just an ordinary team, but there was still one in the background. Who might be the killer? Our MC would possibly be the guy who might have that class, because he was able to have a very fast speed. But nevertheless, it works on our PRS watch, and they are disappointed, because they saw that our protagonist didn't occupy any job at all. She didn't understand how this could be happening. The ability to kill a beast with a human face was almost impossible. Moreover, having a mission like that, these newcomers were on another level. Then she comments, what kind of characters these guys created. So on that battlefield, we can observe the system screen appearing for our MC there. Our protagonist completed a quest that was kind of dealing with those monsters with human faces. For having dealt with those two, they could finally rest, and that's what they do. They end up lying on the ground. They celebrate, because now they managed to send what in their visions was almost impossible to defeat. And at this moment, our AI gets up all happy, saying that now that they are strong, they can reach the last part, which is the most difficult area. But our protagonist stands up and asks them to relax, because it was not yet necessary to advance to the top. They still needed to prepare first. So they stop to understand our protagonist. Then our MC starts to comment that if, by chance, they manage to pass this, and moreover, get a top 1 or even top 3 ranking, they will be rewarded by the military with some armor, like some extremely high-level equipment armor, and these pieces of equipment that they could possibly get from the military would be very useful to them. They could use that to their advantage to get out of this place as quickly as possible. Now he has the ability to kill monsters, but now he can kill these monsters, and these monsters could be exchanged for points. This was already good, because if they had many points, our MC and his group could already be entering a certain list. Now he turns to his group, and then he thinks it's time for them to start earning more points. With more points, they could get more things. The rewards were what mattered most. They quickly understand each other. So a few hours later, we see them there preparing some things. One of these things was some traps, or just to attract the attention of some monsters hidden in the bush. One of these monsters was that poisonous snake. Our MC's friend, all tense, asked him to get ready, because he would need it. He didn't want to be caught by these poisonous snakes. While he was thinking about what would happen to him, he realizes that he would be the first to die, because right behind him, 3 snakes suddenly appear, and these 3 snakes were more than ready to attack him. He was all tense, asking for our protagonist to appear. Soon, we see our MC on top of a tree, commenting to his friend that his friend should be brave, since he has martial arts, the most potent thing you can have in this world. Besides, AI could already be healing him from the wounds he would surely get with these snakes he would catch there. But then, we see him walking around, and 3 snakes start running towards our protagonist's friend. He doesn't notice, but we see our MC appear in the background. He ends up putting his hand in front, making those 3 snakes that were about to catch his friend completely defeated. In the end, after being defeated, a system screen appears in front of him, commenting that now he killed 3 land snakes, level 1. The current experience was 10. He needed to kill many things, but talking about this, next to him several snakes already appear. They start to circle our protagonist, preparing to attack him, but he also gets ready. However, the snakes were much faster. They start running with their mouths open towards our boy. So seeing this, he starts preparing himself, and in one leap he disappears. But minutes later, he passes through these snakes with just a few cuts, and our protagonist manages to send these little creatures to another world. Seeing that our protagonist was struggling to kill some snakes, he realized he needed to keep evolving, as he couldn't let his friends get hurt in the end of these fights that always happen, and the creatures he fights are always so weak. So after a day passes, we see our protagonist looking up where he can see the system screen telling him to evolve more. But what he had already done was enough, since he completed a task requested by the system. After finishing it, he ended up gaining double the XP he should have earned. And because of this, our MC managed to reach level 2. Soon, the people in the background, your friends, are surprised and happy for our protagonist. But changing the subject, they soon comment on what our MC put into his new status. Since he managed to gain a lot of points, he simply says that he divided them among his normal attributes. It doesn't change much, but the new things are helping them in the fight from then on. And soon we see the reaction of the two. They are shocked to discover what our MC has gained, as our Juzi only managed to gain 10 points and couldn't divide them as much among his things. But what shocks him the most is that our protagonist gained 20 points. Something he didn't get. Our AI is disappointed, because she also didn't get much. But to keep her friends from giving up on the fight, our protagonist comments that everything that happened here wasn't just a mere coincidence, as he has a type of L system that allows his XP, or something like that, to be multiplied. If he gains 1, he gains 2 or 3. Soon after commenting on his new system, our MC asks his friends not to tell anyone else about this, as it was his special secret, and he didn't want anyone other than his friends to know about it. Our AI approaches him, claps her hands, but while clapping, she doesn't understand what our protagonist's ability is. But even without understanding, she thinks it's incredible. Our Juzi is in the background, kicking the stones that were in the way, saying that his system wasn't as great as our protagonist's power. And then, since now, he managed to get some compliments and earn some extra XP, the system screen appears, and from that system, our Bakina appears, informing our protagonist that he received some rewards, and among these rewards, he also got some skills. But because he had that skill duplicator, the XP could also be duplicated, along with the skills he would be gaining. His friends are left with their mouths wide open upon hearing this from our system. Soon we see our protagonist not believing it either, as he would also be gaining 2 new professions, and he even wanted to know if this was really true. The system simply agrees with our protagonist, and after agreeing, it gives our boy a phantom card. After receiving this phantom card, he also receives another skill, which was the concentration of phantom eyes. As soon as our boy received this from the system, he was already surprised. But even though he still didn't know how to use these 2 long-range skills, he was still happy, and this ability would allow our boy to escape some great dangers that could catch him. As soon as he realized this, he called his team and asked them to follow him, since he was much stronger now and fighting strong monsters would no longer be a problem. But after following a certain path, 2 days passed, and after these 2 days, we could see them observing what was happening on the other side. They were just watching little AI here. But at that moment, even though a scientist already commented that his sister survived for more than 2 days, which was already more than a miracle, she turns to this new scientist, who appeared, and is happy with his news. They even think of giving them some kind of new title, a title that would give them a lot of visibility. But at this moment, while she was thinking about it, the space of some unknown people appears from there. He already appears with the news, saying that some people were invading their server. And this kind of invasion was not something rare and also not something normal to happen. Knowing that it was an extremely rare thing, this unknown guy, who appears in the background, asks everyone to get ready, because soon their situation would be much worse than bad. So our little purple one approaches this new guy, who appeared, and we are introduced to him. He was Wei Ying, but he doesn't have much time to talk, since our little purple one steps in front of him and cuts off what he was saying, asking if this certain invasion was really happening. The old man simply approaches and comments that this was true. He even wished that what he just said here was false news, so that they wouldn't have to lose so many rookies. Since these passengers are people who come from other countries, who are quite strong in the first place, they invade other servers just to kill rookies in order to be able to be hindering people's development, so that a certain country would be somewhat affected, making the people who were being defeated return to the lobby and lose everything they had managed to do. Meanwhile, the scene we see shifts to another place. In this place, we can observe some novice hunters watching some higher-ups, asking them to go back, but since they were novices and curious to explore the place further, they ended up completely ignoring them. But at that moment of ignoring them, we see some weird-looking people appearing there from behind a portal. They then appeared, put their hands inside the portal and crossed it. Subsequently, several people, part of the passengers, who invade other servers and kill the novices, enter this place and start running towards some people who were there. The novices, having the misfortune of encountering them, all ended up dying at the hands of this stranger. But these creatures not only kill the novices, but also torture them, because their objective is not only to defeat the guys, but also to torture them, so that they never enter that place again, making the country a weaker country. But soon after saying this, we can see the carcass of the guy totally shocked there. But elsewhere, we see our little rock beaten up on a table. She is sad, because she saw that this month, and this year, there will be many novices being defeated by these kinds of invaders. They should have put some strong people next to the novices, but we see the old men commenting that this wasn't necessary, since the novices would need some kind of psychologist, as their minds would not be the same after returning to that same place, where they could die from monsters or from those invaders themselves, and then knowing that they are invading on a large scale, until now, which is not so normal. They will have to prepare. They will have to fight against those invaders, and their objective is also not to let any of those invaders return home with a peaceful life. Our story continues from there shortly after, for it is on a dark night that we can observe our group. While walking there, they hear a noise. At this moment, our boy turns as quickly as possible in the direction from which the noise came. His friend also turns towards our protagonist and asks, "What happened?" But he pulls out his spear and holds it firmly, as maybe some creature would appear to try their luck, saying to them that in the direction they came from, there was something strange approaching. We see the two there already trying to refute it, saying they came from that direction and there was no way there could be a person or monster there. And it is very likely our protagonist is crazy. Our AI says this, and our boy wanted to prove his real story. So he takes his spear, which he had held in hand, and then he swings it in another direction, and wanted to test this direction, since a type of aura was coming from that direction. Then after throwing it at high speed, we see it passing through the forest at high speed, even making a streak of movement, but it then ends up hitting something. Our protagonist realizes it hit something, so he walks in the direction of that thing he possibly shot at to check things, while the two behind him remain without understanding what was happening. After walking a bit, he reaches the point where that spear hit something. Upon arriving, the system already comments that our protagonist killed a level 2 boar, earning 1 more point. Now only 1 point is missing to complete the 200 that were needed. I never noticed the boy hitting a level 2 boar. Now they were leaving with a profit, since finding a level 2 boar wasn't for just anyone, right? You need those extra skills, but for our protagonist, it wasn't luck at all, since it was part of his abilities. Soon after killing that boar, he ends up receiving some rewards from the system. He just had to accept, which he does. He accepts it. After accepting that, in front of our protagonist, some cards appear, granting him some new abilities. This thing he received will allow his Phantom Hand card's ability to have much more powerful damage, but combined with another ability that will allow our protagonist to detect monsters from a great distance. He can see a monster as if it were close. He will be able to kill monsters with high precision, without missing any monster that appears to him. In other words, our protagonist will be able to kill low-level enemies from a long distance without those monsters being able to detect. Newly, this thing he received will allow his Phantom Hand card's Vive skill to have much more powerful damage, but combining it with another skill will allow our protagonist to find monsters at a long distance. There he manages to see a monster as if it were close. He will be able to kill monsters with high precision. He will not miss any monster now that will appear to him. In other words, our protagonist will be able to kill low-level enemies from a long distance without those monsters detecting our MC. But he still has some points to distribute in his stats, to improve some things in his stats, and as soon as he completed that thing there, they end up following the path. But while they were following the path, shadows of some mysterious people passed by near a lake, but these mysterious shadows commented that they were lucky, because now they will have a second prey. These preys were our protagonist, but they continue to follow the path. Only at the moment water that was there starts to form some bubbles, and it didn't last that long, as from those bubbles began to emerge some kind of people. Well, these people are very problematic. Since they were those who were hunting the beginners, they were lucky, because their prey today will not have more luck, because here perhaps will be their end. And now he asks his group to take care of these new newbies here. So our protagonist, noticing the threat, asks everyone to be prepared, as he also asks them not to be afraid, as they wouldn't do much harm to them. No, they would only make them be devoured by some monsters, and well, they would do some painful cruelty to them. But this wasn't bad, and then at this moment, they get close enough to manage to surround our protagonist and his group. Right after surrounding our protagonist and his group, we can see another one appearing from under that water where the same appeared. Well, as he is the boss, he ends up asking everyone there to take care of these newbies, as his goal was to make sure no newbie could pass this test. He needed to make everyone fail the test. So we see there the reaction of our AI, which doesn't take long to recognize these guys, as these guys are those people who like to hunt newbies. Upon commenting about this, we see the reaction of our protagonist and his friend, who didn't understand that this could possibly be for possible, and also wanting to fight against them wouldn't be a good idea, as she uses her watch that allows detecting their levels, and the levels of these creatures here below are all level 3, which means they have no chance of fighting hand to hand with them. Moreover, it's not just these that are level 3, because as soon as she looks to the side, she finds that guy, who just appeared, and the same one who, at the moment, was level 5. Fighting against this was asking to die. Also fighting against him wasn't a good idea. Our protagonist here, even using all his power, reaches level 4. Fighting against someone level 5 was too much. He didn't understand why these people suddenly appeared here to face them, and at this moment when he was thinking about what he would do, we see the reaction of the boss shouting for his handsome companions to take care of the newbies, and we see them smiling. They come to know that the hunt will be starting. As soon as he talks about it, we can see them starting to run towards the newbies. At this moment, our protagonist runs in another direction and shouts for his companions to run elsewhere. They need to split up. Since the two there were strong on their own, he would try to deal with some critters right there. So seeing in the background, we see the boss saying that he found many cowards today, since they preferred to run rather than fight. Then he asks for the two there, who were level 4 and level 3, to chase after the guy who ran alone, who was our protagonist. He would take care of those two, who ran in another direction alone. At this moment in the forest, we can observe several people running while chasing a single person. This was our protagonist. They managed to catch up to him and wouldn't allow him to escape. So he runs to catch him, but the moment he thinks of catching our protagonist, he ends up noticing something happening, because out of nowhere, he ended up doing that vanishing act and disappeared. Their eyes couldn't follow his high speed. He then ran around them. They were surrounded trying to find our protagonist. At that moment, standing and smiling, they were happy because they saw a new target. They wanted to play hide and seek. Then he asks his companion to not enter the game of their new opponent, that they here would have the honor of defeating our protagonist. He even asks his opponent to join the game too. Since he would be defending from his first attack, he would give the first honor to our protagonist. As soon as he talked about this, we see him launching that spear in the middle of them. They, who tried to defend from the attack, were startled, and saw that they wouldn't be able to defend. So he steps back a little, and the other one, who tries to defend from the attack, our protagonist gets red and at the same time asks who this guy was. But he doesn't have time to solve this question, since our protagonist barely misses and cleans up his friend. But he there in the background, keeps watching what was happening, trying to find his friend. He even thinks that this game was a bit too serious, but when he looks to the side, he ends up finding his friend. But a little spoiler, he widens his eyes, and then he finds his friend completely knocked out. Our protagonist with a single thrust, managed to kill his friend. Right after doing this, he shouts for him to wake up right away. But this was not a game to play with friends. At that moment, our protagonist appears out of nowhere, behind a tree. The kid is all disappointed. He thought his opponents, I don't know, would be strong enough to defend against our protagonist's attacks, but he is sad to know that with a single thrust, he killed just one guy. But after seeing that, this mysterious boy, who just appeared, managed to kill his friend with a single hit. He ends up activating his watch to see what level he was, since before he managed to see that our protagonist was level 3. But there, looking at our protagonist, the watch ends up glitching, because it can't detect our protagonist. System saying that there is no specific level, and his damage was not shown there either. Because, the guy from there had already started in this monster fighting business or fighting against novices. He had attributes of 45 points, but on the contrary, our protagonist has 60 points. This wasn't right, and the numbers didn't add up for him. It seemed almost impossible, that's what he thought. But at this moment, our protagonist, in a flash of high speed, manages to hit this guy, but he managed to hold on a bit. But in return, he was thrown against the wall, falling to his knees. We see our protagonist in front of him in a strange position. He falls hard on the ground, while our protagonist watches him there, and his other companion is totally knocked out on the ground too. But as he had foreseen, he also discovered that a level 4 guy could manage to kill a level 3 guy, but 2 in a one-on-one he couldn't. What he did was just divide them to be able to hunt them one by one, which was enough to kill one of them. And then it means that his group might be able to defeat the people there. But what our protagonist also discovered in this place was that he could be absorbing the defeated people there to get their points and attributes for himself. As foreseen, our system fairy appears, giving our protagonist 100 experience points for killing those 2 hunters, who tried their luck in capturing him. Only at this moment did he end up discovering a new experience. He saw that by killing a player, he would gain much more XP than killing a monster. A smile appears on his face, because he saw that he could also be gaining some things from the defeated player, perhaps a skill or even some good equipment. It was at this moment that our boy discovered a new way to level up faster. Then he asks the system for help to suck those guys he defeated. The system, as refined as it is, ends up supporting our protagonist. Then he manages to completely absorb these guys lying on the ground, also reaching level 3. He even celebrates this, but now they're in front. He bends down in front of a bystander to pick up some important things. Now his total attribute points are 76 and those passengers, who are fighting against them, are level 5. Probably for our protagonist to reach level 5, he only needs 60 points, but he will get that soon. He collects some important things worth taking. Now, prepared to head in a certain direction, he asks Juzi, his friend, not to get too hurt. He will be going there to save him. But here, the scene is cut to another place, where we see our protagonist's friend, who, at the moment, was completely exhausted. Our AI was there also exhausted, while healing our Juzi, who was totally worn out. But there was another place here. We have their happy faces. They are happy, because they will be able to make the doctor, a guy who knows martial arts, give up his future traps. This was a big victory for them. So they need to do the best and greatest torture on these two. But speaking of that, and at the same time searching for them, we have our guy there healing our Juzi, who, at the same time was just a wreck, couldn't take it anymore. But at the same time, she was also thinking about our PR, because she thought that our men and wouldn't get hurt too much. Since it was 2 guys against our protagonist, she didn't know if our big guy would come back alive. But the friend of our PR asked her to relax. Our big guy wasn't someone who could be easily defeated. He would arrive here sooner or later. While they were laughing at the boys below, we see someone in the background approaching quickly. But to end their happiness, the invaders had the brilliant idea to finish off the newcomers, since the main parts of what needed to be done with them were already done. So what was left to end this suffering was to send them to the afterlife. They then prepared to send the 2 Jeffs to kill the 2 there with just a few blows. As they were slowly approaching our PRS group, we feel an extremely high pressure, and at the same time, someone saying that he would appear, whether they liked it or not. At this moment, we see our big guy preparing. He takes his spear and throws it at high speed in the direction of those extras, who were surrounding our MC's friend and our AI, who was completely defenseless. They are hit hard and thrown to the side. Looking to the side, we see the 2 falling there because our MC hit one direct. As predicted by our Juzi, he is happy, because now the best and the strongest has arrived, our protagonist. Then that level 5 guy widens his eyes and at the same time asks himself what was happening and where this unknown person was, who was wreaking havoc on his team. In his humility, he even asked for him to appear right away. The request was almost fulfilled, but he wasn't going to show himself so soon. He looks around trying to find this invader, who was killing his comrades, even using his best skills to find obstacles or people nearby. He can't find anything. He is even surprised, because maybe a new profession was discovered. One of those professions was escaping from a specific area. It meant that if you entered there, you were basically detected the next minute. So he ends up moving a bit back, knowing he wouldn't have a chance fighting this new opponent. He only thought about running. Our Juzi and our AI are there, not understanding why he was running in another direction. She looks and sees the captain totally disoriented, running to one side without knowing what he was doing. At that moment, our big guy appears from the shadows, holding his spear firmly in his hand. He yells for that guy, who tortured his companions, to come back, since he would not allow the one who tortured his best friend and best girlfriend to get away easily. He wouldn't give a second chance to losers like this, so he asks him to go straight to a very hot place. and with these words, he throws that spear in the direction of that extra. The extra didn't even have time to react. Defender. Since at the next moment, he is hit squarely, he ends up falling from the tree, along with his buddies, who were totally defeated there. Now they are all lying on the ground. Our big boy comes out from behind a tree and starts walking towards our AI and asks what was happening and if everyone was okay. But as soon as she started walking towards him, happy that he returned, she gives the sad news that our Juicy is basically quite injured there, and we see only the guy's carcass still alive. Unfortunately, she won't be able to heal our protagonist's friend, making it impossible. Our Juicy simply raises his head and is happy for our protagonist's return, but unfortunately, he will no longer be able to follow his old friend. Then, after saying these beautiful words, he falls to the ground, and after falling to the ground, he ends up turning to one side and continues to speak his last words. He is happy to be there next to our protagonist. What a good time having this little adventure alongside our boy, but now he can no longer follow our MC. His eyes couldn't stay open, and he was already fading away, but our AI starts to cry and at the same time scream for him to wake up at once. So it's an end. There's no reason to come back, but he can't stand it with a strange look. He just grabs a background extra, grabs that, and throws it in the middle of our protagonist's friend's belly so he can get up already, because he couldn't stay on the ground for a long time. Since he left 6 passengers, not dead, only a little crippled, they won't be able to walk anymore, but what they were going to do was simply drain all their power to fully recover his life, making his life increase to 100%. And since those who fell to the ground were some kind of players, this was possible. Juicy stands there understanding and didn't know about this novelty, because for him, this was a new attack. But our boy, who already knew what he was going to say something like that, simply smiles, knowing they were torturing their friends. They could be replicating the same idea, torturing them a bit and then taking all their XP. Our protagonist's friend and our AI wonders if our boy took it seriously, but he opens his eyes in front of him, and our hero is happy to know a little bit and then take all his XP. Our MC's friend, our AI wonders if our boy didn't take it seriously, but there he opens his eyes. In front of him, our MC is happy to know that he woke up. It was actually good, but unfortunately, he will need to take a little bit of his life. The 3 with not a macabre smile get closer to him. He begged for them to spare him. He didn't want to be near those people, since those three newbies, were scaring him. But from there, the scene cuts to another place. In this other place, we can observe those who invaded the territory of our protagonist. They woke up scared and afraid. They didn't want to enter their server anymore, as there they were, tortured, and also lost all the XP they had gained by killing the newbies. But at the moment, we can see one of the guys who had a high-level power commenting that maybe that old man from before had a secret weapon that could be fighting against the invaders. And this was surprising to them, since it was the first time something like this had happened to them. But at the same time, in the territory where our little purple girl is, we see a scientist commenting that the news might not be good, since they were basically all sent to a certain place. As he comments on this, our little purple girl distressed, thinking that she needed to send someone strong to go in there and take care of those invaders. Then we see the scientist asking her not to be so alarmed, as maybe this wouldn't be so necessary, since what they would really need to do was hire some mercenaries, as they would come out of that place very tortured, and maybe things would get pretty bad for them. But then we see the scientist with a new surprise, since he realized that those invaders who were invading their territories were killed. But they weren't just killed, the people who were fighting against these invaders were leveling up. Then the old man, along with our little purple girl, opens his mouth in surprise and disbelief. We see the reaction of the old man, who thinks that the invaders wouldn't be helping the newbies. Their goal was to kill the newbies. They even thought that maybe the invaders were helping them to kill monsters. But the scientist doesn't believe in this idea, since the levels they are getting are many levels, so there is only one possibility. This only possibility, he thinks, is that the newbies inside were fighting against these invaders, and were managing to win, since they are getting enough levels to surprise everyone, because they are killing the invaders and getting their levels. Then, already knowing this good news, the commander, who was having his beautiful tea, throws it on the ground, stands up, and yells to call a specialist to show the specific data of those people there who are managing to kill these invaders. As he talks about this, that scientist in the background approves. He then takes his tablet and starts to fiddle with some things. The old man widens his eyes when he discovers the people who were sending those invaders crashing down. This was our protagonist, along with our AI also, along with Juicy, but he rolls his eyes even more. The reason was simple. They are all level 3 and don't understand how they are getting passengers there, who are much higher level than them. What Su Lanlin ends up putting into practice was that the martial arts guy was completely taking care of the passengers, and so, possibly it would be an easy way to be able to win. But the old man ended up interrupting her, saying that, maybe, it wasn't him, because the guy who is more attentive wasn't him, but Jiang. because our protagonist was an unknown guy, who was also gaining quite a few levels. So then he asks to check our MCS system, but when he looks there, he doesn't find anything. Since to be able to find something with his new power, he will need to look at our MC personally. Also because he uses a very old watch, and this watch had stopped sending updates for a few good years, which means that by using the internet, they won't be able to get precious information from our protagonist. What they will have to do is, unfortunately, wait for him to leave the portal to be able to discover what he has installed in his own body. But the old man then ends up approaching the portal. She is surprised what he will be doing. We see a smile appearing on his face. He finds this new thing about Jiang interesting. This was new to him, so he will need to gather a lot of information about Jiang, because things are tough for them. And while the villain was happy about the new thing, he was discovering about our protagonist from another place. We can already see our Juzi happy there, right, seeing that now he can be using the carcass of defeated extras to fully recover his health for himself. This was more than new. Besides, AI is also happy too. She managed to recover a lot of HP from her life, so we see our Juzi happy there. Right, for now. He also ended up unlocking some new skills. One of these will allow Juzi to knock down several opponents. They had attacked all at once. At this moment, we also see that it wasn't just our Juzi who managed to get some new skills. No, AI also got some new skills. One of these was the Heart Doctor's ability, which will allow her healing ability to be greatly improved in the background. We see Jiang praising her. Now he knows that she will be much more powerful in a fight. Out of nowhere, Juzi then approaches our Kai. Right after approaching him, he is happy. They're showing off, thinking now that he could be stronger than our MC, so fighting against new passengers will be much easier. But he, to end all his happiness, comments that the new passengers are much stronger, and there is one there that was level 37. His current level was level 4. What will he be doing near a guy of level 37? He there explains a few things. AI. After killing those invaders, he and his friends gained student points. She gained 96 points that could be easily distributed in her attributes. But Jiang Kai managed to reach level 3 after killing those invaders, who were trying to catch our protagonist in the forest. But after killing the level 5 guy and the level 4 one, he managed to surpass their levels. So then we see his friend surprised and a little happy for his progress. But the one with pink hair approaches Kai and starts asking him where they would be heading next, since staying here is no longer a good idea. With that said, our MC mentions that before he killed that level 5 guy, he mentioned that there were still 2 invading teams in this place, the closest one to them, so they needed to be a bit more careful, since their goal was to capture the first team. But at the moment, he talks about this. Half an hour later, in this very forest, we see another group of those extras. The same ones smile and laugh at the previous group, who were defeated by rookies. They didn't believe it, since for them, killing rookies was the easiest thing. The extra, who hunted rookies, just because he is level 5, asks those there to retire. But out of nowhere, we see the leader, who is also level 5, saying that they should be careful, because they were also warned by their superior leader that there were some rookies more advanced than them, which could mean that they could die too if they fought against these rookies. But the invaders start mocking these guys, saying that they are level 5 superior to previous levels, which means that any rookie who wants to try their luck in stopping them could come at them, and they would take them all on. But at the same time, are the little pig back? We take our protagonist, who was watching everything that was happening from then on. Our MC then turns in the direction of our MC. Worried, she asks him if he would have the courage to be fighting against a new C-level invader. Well, that wasn't a good idea at this moment. So after hearing all this from the pink-haired girl, we see our protagonist asking her to stay calm, because our protagonist's abilities are already good enough for him to be able to make everyone come out alive, so he could be fighting against those new C-levels there. Then he observes that if he happened to let them escape, they could be chasing after the newbies, and that wouldn't be good. Since it wasn't a good idea, he starts running towards these invaders. At that moment, his group asks him to keep hiding, but it doesn't work anymore, because the leader of those invaders notices our protagonist running towards him. He asks his group to be careful, because someone was getting close to him. They then observe and comment, laughing at our protagonist. They were laughing at the statistics of our MC since the kid was level 4. They were even surprised that the newbie was there trying to invade them or trying to fight in an area like this, where there are strong monsters. At this moment, as they talk about it, we see the leader with a smile on his face. He asks his group to take care of those little guys, too. They then start running at full speed. He asks them to maintain the formation he asked for, as with that, they could be fighting against several strong people. So they run towards our protagonist in their formation. Our MC runs, but now he runs in another direction, because right behind, we see that whole group of people running after our MC to try to catch him. But this was already boring, because using this strategy, he wouldn't be able to defeat these creatures. Before with his group, he had come up with a plan. He would serve as bait while Juzi stayed behind. At the right moment, he would come out and use his new ability to knock down some invaders to defeat them more easily. After that, he would take the opportunity to finish off the rest of the invaders, but now they were at a disadvantage. Since the whole group was separated and Juicy couldn't use his ability there, he already knew that he couldn't use his strategy against these extras, but he had another plan. However, they wouldn't let him. They started running at high speed towards our MC, determined to catch him, no matter what. At that moment, he suddenly stopped. After stopping, he used a new ability, because he heard that the invaders wanted to finish everyone off. So he turned towards the invaders, and they began to realize that our MC was attacking with all his might. Standing there, they were stunned to see that this child was running at high speed towards them. For them, this meant nothing since what they had just seen and what our silver did was an easy victory for them. They didn't like to win against someone running well. They could catch. After catching them, they would do that basic torture. And since our silver spoiled all their plans, he then ran at full speed towards him. Now closer to our MC, he used his knife to finish him off. Getting close enough, he slashed our protagonist, even cutting our MC. With a smile on his face, he commented that victory was already assured. Our MC felt the small sting on his arm, but he didn't stop. At that moment, he started running in another direction. The strongest one stayed behind, just watching him run towards the group that was a little weaker than him. By running towards them, the invaders understood that he was willing to die today. They then tried to catch our MC with everything they had, with their small knives in hand. However, getting a little closer to him, we see our MC easily dodging, each one of them, dodging. He also managed to slash the creatures with his knife. The invaders were defeated. In the background, we see the leader of this group just watching his group being defeated one by one, not understanding how it was possible for a guy to fight with several level 5 people. At that moment, he also pulled out his knife to try something. As he drew his weapon, we could see the reflection of our protagonist in his eyes, but at that moment, he, who was level 4, was defeating the level 5 guys. They didn't understand. The other quickly pulled out his watch to confirm this. At that moment, he ended up calling for his captain, but even using his watch, he couldn't discover the speed or power of our MC. However, after researching a little, ends up discovering something about our boy. This thing was his attribute, but it was the agility attribute that was very high. But when looking at our protagonist, we observed a look of anger, pure anger, wanting to defeat the figurant. However, the one who used the watch ends up shouting for the captain to be careful, because he was around level 30. Shouting surprised, he couldn't believe how a guy like this had level 30. It was impossible. Shouting again to his companion, the one with rocker hair, he yells at him to look at this damn watch, because he only had level 5 and 20 attribute points, and if his agility was much higher than his, he had already lost this fight. There was no way to fight against him. It was certain defeat. So understanding the reality the kid lived in, he then shouts for his companions to protect him, because the kid was just shaking there. Well, the Wi-Fi doesn't go through, but there he comments that the watch doesn't fail. The kid doesn't even imagine the strength our protagonist possesses at that moment. However, for thinking too much, he discovered that our MC was just playing with them. This means that all this time he was superior to these guys. So again, he shouts to his groups. Now he shouts for them to run away, because they had been deceived. They had to get out of there as quickly as possible. The guys, not understanding, simply react to the news of their leader, who needed to run. But now that a bunch of idiots finally discovered his strength, and now that he also managed to deceive their group formation, he has no way to keep running. Shouting as loudly as possible, he yells for his companion to come out of the fight quickly, so that he could help the leader. Then looking up at the moonlight, he observes a ray of light appearing there. So he ends up saying that now it was his turn, the turn to play. The kid jumped as if jumping on a trampoline, and the guy jumps on them. They don't even have the option to run, because now everything was gathered in one place. So our MC's friend, with just one jump, manages to knock down several people. So at this moment, our protagonist could already be proceeding with his next plan. In his hand, he held some daggers enough to finish off some extras or invaders, who were trying their luck in killing the newcomers. Now that his plan worked, our MC with those knives in hand, just asks to leave things there with him. So with that hand, he slashes each one of them. They didn't have a chance to defend themselves. Thus they end up falling defeated to the ground. Some were still floating, but everything fall, but thereafter everyone falls to the ground. Our protagonist turns around and now realizes that the rookie hunters are all defeated. Just as always, with open mouths. Not believing in Kai's strength, Kai managed to kill 9 level 5 people. He can't believe that maybe this is possible, but at that moment, the system appears, showing that Jiang, our MC, managed to reach level 5 due to him getting 200 points by killing these rookie hunters. So in the end, he reaches level 5, gaining several points to distribute in his attributes. Gaining, in the end, some points. The pink-haired one approaches him giving those compliments at the same time. There also Kai and Juicy are disappointed for losing again in the dispute of our hero. he won't lose forever. It's just that at this moment, our men doesn't ask his group to take care of capturing the XP from the remains there. That ended up being left behind, because there were still some invaders, who were low on health, and they should kill them to get their levels. But before that, he ends up stopping now, because before he asked his group to take care of hunting those snakes. At the moment, our MC did almost nothing, but now it will be the opposite, because now he will be hunting the monsters, so that his group will be in first place. His group's then par, knowing that he will now be moving to finally reach that finish line. We see the happiness on the face of our protagonist's group, because their goal now is to hunt monsters, no more players. As soon as he comments on this, we observe them here on a dark night. The moon was shining the same there, then walking through this forest, commenting that they needed to hunt the monsters as fast as possible, because they were getting closer and closer to the finish line. But however, as they are getting closer and closer to the finish line, they will have one more problem, because when they get close to the finish line, they realize that the monsters will be much stronger. They should be careful while hunting the monsters, because it would be very good for them to hunt these strong monsters. But as soon as he says that there were strong monsters in the region, they hear a gigantic growl coming from the depths of the forest. Then he gets scared, the group behind gets scared too, and they stop. But at that moment, then a giant mouth appears, but it was completely defeated there on the ground. But it wasn't just one, but two of those monsters with human faces, that were defeated here on the ground behind some trees. Our protagonist and his group were hiding, while our AI realizes that this human-faced monster was killed by some kind of beast, because they're looking at the monster's body. He had basically found several wounds there on his body, but just with this, they wouldn't find maybe the monster that killed this monster. And at that moment, then our MC uses his ghost eye. Using that, his eyes start to change in that form that he can observe the past of the beast's death. Now he sees the golden light from afar. It looks like a golden creature was basically killing these human-faced beasts. AI. Hearing this from our protagonist, you ask what creature is that? That's shown in a slightly golden color behind. Suddenly, a slightly shining golden light appears. And this shining golden light, guess what? Goes towards our protagonist and his group caught off guard. This shining light then starts to run at full speed towards them. But for killing two monsters that had a human face, which for them, were very strong. They wonder what kind of monster was that managed to kill these two human-faced monsters. But when asking about this, that mysterious light from before runs towards our MCS group, passing through our AI, and we realize that this monster was a bit, I don't know, perverted, because the little creature ends up tearing the parts specifics of our AI. On the other hand, that creature ends up tearing a bit of our Juicy's clothes at the same time. However, that does not stop him. He is happy to have torn a bit of clothes, but now this slightly golden light occurs in another direction. But this direction was of our protagonist, who was already prepared there to be grabbing it with his hand. The creature goes full steam towards our MC, then widening his eyes with quite a bit of surprise, because this light is approaching at a high speed. We observe in the background, Juicy shouting for Kai to be a bit careful, because this creature was running at high speed, causing quite a bit of damage. So he should be careful, because if the bite gets him, he might die. After commenting on this new occurrence, then that light ends up stopping in front of our MC. Well, not stopping. Our boy didn't hold it, leaving his group surprised with the strength of our protagonist. Our protagonist, with a single hand, grabbed that slightly golden light, but observed it a bit closer. That light in the end turned into something else. It turned into a rodent. Our MC is grabbing that rodent in his hand, surprised with the little creature. The little creature is surprised that our MC at such a fast speed stopped something so fast. AI, quite surprised with what our MC did, covers her mouth at the same time, surprised that he managed to grab that. But looking a bit closer, our MC understands that the fast thing was just a little chubby rat. But our chubby rat didn't like our MC's words. Quite irritated, it starts to move in our boy's hand. Our protagonist, understanding that the little creature didn't want to be let go, we observe then him letting it go and asking it to try its luck again. Thus released from our protagonist's hand, it activates its lightning mode again, making a beam of light appear in its eyes. Its eyes change in a different way. After this, it ends up changing into that light form, running at high speed backwards. It then runs at full speed towards Kai. In the background, Juicy shouts for Kai to be careful, because getting caught by that was not good, because that little chubby rat wasn't a monster you should be messing around with. However, again, our protagonist, with a single hand, grabs the chubby rat again in his hand. But now he says that this rat was too slow again. Then realizing that it was too slow, he ends up letting go of that little rat. And again it repeats the same thing and again and again and again. He grabs that little rat, infinitely. The chubby rat quite surprised with Kai's speed. Kai was quite fast, surprising his group too, finding it incredible. However, several minutes later, we observe the result of that. The chubby rat ended up, in the end, surrendering. Right, it ended up kind of understanding that our protagonist was no longer its opponent, an opponent that perhaps it would be able to beat at high speed. Now that the rat has surrendered, our MC realizes that the rat was self-captured. It would no longer be running. His friend in the background appears shouting at him how it was possible for him to capture a high-speed rat several times there, without even to err only once. Here he looks beside him. He realizes that Kai was strong for having killed a monster with a human face. Then he thinks to himself if he would be capable of taming a creature like this. But now understanding that he could be taming the little animal, he ends up putting that in his clothes. Then ahead, he shouts for his group to level up faster, because they were almost reaching level 4, and it would already be good are there. She finds Kai very cute, and she already wanted to be picking him up to give him those morning caresses for him. His friend, again, doesn't understand how our protagonist there managed to overcome a rat of another speed. He even thinks that his butts did not compare to the level of strength of our Kai. But at this the scene already cuts to another place. On a bright, moonlit, dark night, we observe a hooded guy, laughing a lot at the things that were happening. However, he ended up reaching a point that he wanted so much, because after so many days, he finally managed to find the end of the test zone, which means that now he could be resting. So looking forward, he ends up finding a gigantic structure protected by various things, and at this moment, then he only thinks of one thing. Enter this thing, unknown, hooded guy, thus then ends up moving forward. However, when he gets a little further ahead, there a gate ends up opening at the same time. When it opens, we observe 3 knights appearing from that door. Gentlemen then congratulate this newcomer, but he ends up giving me some excuses. One of these was that someone there already managed to reach the first place. So what it means that it was no use being the first to get here Shoton. This was one of the guards, and here, at the moment, I try to give him some good arguments that being the first place was not even a sign of victory. However, that hooded guy ends up taking his hand off his shoulder and comments that the guy who was in first place was him, the guy there who managed to reach the top one, and to demonstrate that it was really real, he pulls out some cards of some level 2 boars. So here we observe in the background the guards surprised with the news that they just saw. They couldn't believe that a newcomer guy would be able to hunt some level 2 monsters. Well, all proud. He comments that he came from an extremely rich family, so it meant that, yes, of course, he would be in first place. There was no way he could lose to anyone at this moment. Then one of the guards recognizes him. He is from the Xian family of the most powerful guild, so there they recognize the family and the power he has. So Tao, the main guard, congratulates him again for having managed to reach the top one, and surely no one will be passing him, since he is even the most powerful person here now. Again he exalts himself there, shouting to everyone that he was the guy who would get the new record, and surely no one will be able to pass him. Because also getting the first place is a way of saying that he arrived, that the strongest guy. So from now on, while they take a little more time for him, all the ghost stars will belong to him, even our Huang Wei, that unknown, hooded guy. But that this here is not so important, because our scene is cut to another place, well, to a more special group. Our MC that here again was walking through this dark and eerie forest here, but again, our protagonist gives those warnings that now they should keep a closer eye on any is dead, because a strong little monster could appear. But behind we observe there himself, asking if the strongest hunters group there would be afraid. I don't know of this chubby little mouse, but be afraid they wouldn't, because our AI already wanted our chubby rating is already starting to give those massages their morning caresses. But this caress and the chubby ratings morning massages will have to stop later, because right behind them, we observe a roar again. Some monsters caught the attention of their group, so after hearing that gigantic roar, they turned at high speed towards the noise. However, a slightly gray paw passed by, and our MC widened his eyes. The reason for his widened eyes was simple. These beasts that appeared here were the shadowless wolves. Without a doubt, these little creatures were pests. And then, in the middle of those shadow wolves, another one appeared. But what appeared was its little paw. The paw already emanated a small ray of power, and from there it fully emerged, the king of wolves. And so, having realized that this wolf king appeared here, it meant they had reached the boss's lair, and now their previous doubt that was lingering in the air was answered. There were no monsters here because of this. However, at the moment, they were thinking of fighting these beasts, but they didn't have much time to think as the beasts surrounded them, and they then asked to prepare for the second round. As soon as he commented on this, and seeing the situation they were surrounded in, Juicy quickly locked himself up, for he had heard that this Wolf King had never been defeated in a mano-a-mano fight, so they had no chance of fighting these beasts. But our protagonist, already frustrated with his plans always almost failing, gripped his spear a little tighter. They couldn't fight here, as our protagonist could easily escape. However, Juicy and our AI would not be able to escape easily from the two wolves, and at the moment, he couldn't flee. He would have to fight to the death, so he shouted for his group to flee. for he would manage to kill some wolves to earn some points to pass the test. But to kill the wolf kings, he needed their help. He then asked for their help. After asking, he ended up jumping towards the wolves. The wolves tried to bite him, but fail. Behind we observed Juzi, who ended up trying to help our protagonist in any way they could. Juzi then used his ability, that ability he had gained earlier, to knock down some of the monsters. At that moment behind him, an explosion occurred. As the explosion happened, our protagonist then began running in another direction, towards the Wolf King. But behind we saw Juzi using his ability to use himself as a springboard. After using his body as a springboard, he jumped up. Minutes later, he ended up falling, hitting the ground hard, and also hitting some of the wolves close enough to kill them. But after using this ability, we observed the pink-haired girl asking for a little bit of snake venom on her weapon to fight more seriously. While taking it seriously, our protagonist asked the two to watch him, for he was about to make a feast of the wolves. So he used the concentration of the Phantom Eye and the Flying Hands cards. Using these two combinations, the pink-haired girl launched a combo, and this combo went full steam towards the wolves. The Wolf King then observed that type of power approaching, but the little beast did nothing. That kind of power he used with all his strength was repelled with a simple movement of Wolf-chan. Juzi, AI and our MC were quite surprised by this turn of events, seeing that their plan had failed and they couldn't fight anymore. But this left the little wolf very, very angry. The beast growled in the direction of our plan, and the weaker wolves also growled at the same time. Running towards them, they surround our protagonist in their group, so as not to be caught. They tried to defend themselves, right, but this was not good. The Wolf King was sending the weaker wolves to hunt our MC's group, and at the moment, they were at another disadvantage. Our AI was being hurt, while our Juzi was using his hand to attack there. While worrying about Kai, who here was trying to use everything in any way to defend himself from these wolves. The wolves had no chance, because this defense of the Wolf King was very strong, and now the wolves are much more surrounding them, and they had no more advantage. And at this moment there, our MC was shaking a lot, and at this point he ends up waking up our chubby rat, who here gets irritated with what was happening. Rat is hidden in the clothes of our protagonist. He observes three little wolves running towards him, hidden behind the clothes still. He looks in that direction of the three wolves, and they see the wolf approaching as fast as possible from our protagonist. Only that here he uses his lightning ability again. His lightning ability was enough to knock down some, but this was not enough. Our chubby rat uses his maximum power, making it much stronger after using his maximum power, and jumps from the lap of our protagonist and goes in another direction. Well, these directions were random, but ends up, in the end, hitting a specific animal. This was the Wolf King. His mouth open, he ends up giving that basic bite on the animal. Neither that bite was enough to knock down this Wolf King, but our MC realizes that after breaking that shield that our wolf had in hand there, the raider managed to easily gnaw the animal, also managing to defeat the wolf. But it's not over yet. He saw that the wolf now was at a high disadvantage, so what he needed to do was run as fast as possible in his direction already. That the wolf had a gigantic wound already in itself. Wolf uses the rest of his wolves to defend our protagonist, but this defense will no longer be our big guy here. Uses that of his fish. After using Aquila, he throws in the direction of the wolf, hitting the animal squarely can hit. That squarely from the lap of that wolf ends up jumping our chubby rat. But here, it's not over the fight. He approaches again as fast as possible from the Wolf King, holding now in his hand three fish to end the fight faster than it can think. But for this fight to end much faster than he can think, he ends up using the Ghost Eye. In the Ghost Eye, he will be able to look closer at the wound of the attack that our rat made in him. Yes, approaching, he realizes something happening in the wolf had a type of crystal. That crystal, out of nowhere, starts to appear. Several rays enough that those rays there was to manage to kill the wolf. The wolf falls hard on the ground, leaving there. The pink-haired one surprised what just happened, and the Wolf King ends up being defeated there easily by our MC. But he here does not understand what just stands there with mouth open and eyes wide open at the moment followed. There the system already appears, congratulating our protagonist for having killed a shadow Wolf King. But Sky thought he would be having a somewhat long fight, but after using a certain specific attack, he ended up dealing 200 critical damage to the wolf, making the wolf completely defeated. That's right. Only, however, he didn't hit a critical hit for a long time. So it means it was normal to have a critical hit here at this moment. Only the wolves there feared now our protagonists. Since their leader was killed, scared and afraid, they then try to flee a little back. Only then Juzi asks Kai to look in the direction of the wolves. Wolves here, at the moment, were trying to escape from here. Then he asks his friends if now they could be fighting again. They, who haven't gotten tired even a little bit, were ready to run towards the wolves, because now that they no longer have the Wolf King here, they could be killing the beginner wolves, the weaker wolves, much faster, and also they should take into account what they went through at the hands of these wolves. They should take revenge. So in the end, they shouldn't stay behind, for their goal here now was to hunt the little beasts without leaving a single soul alive. In whirlwind of golden energy, the battle roar was palpable, bodies falling from the sky in the background. There on the ground, Arkham launches with the spear in hand towards the heart of the battle. Arthur gives a war cry there to give an extra force in combat, and then he ends up delivering a powerful blow, enveloped in flames, creating afterwards a golden aura that extends from his spear to defeat the monsters. But elsewhere, we observe our protagonist, just watching the fight in the background to get a good idea of what should be done. But under a night sky, the body of a giant wolf marks the end of the battle. Around, other wolves are all fallen, defeated, while a trio of young warriors gather in a corner. Only our king, with a confident smile, celebrates victory. Victory came over the boss of this area here, who ended up being defeated. Then he addresses the group, remembering that there are many injured wolves still lying on the ground. There is basically much encouragement left, so that they could accumulate more points, while the pink-haired one observes with curiosity, then asks what would be the next step they would be following. Because with the accumulated points, our Kim affirms that the next step they will have to take is the finish line. But hours later, the trio ends up arriving in a bustling city. Juzi, friend of our protagonist, stays there, basically stuck and with mouth open at the size of the city. Then he ends up recognizing the city as Zen, the largest base in the country of Zen in the Phantom Star. While admiring the city, one of the group members alerts that their rat has somehow decided to flee. Kai, our protagonist, doesn't care about the rat's escape. He affirms that what he did was just a little freedom for the animal. Fate could be basically difficult, but another hour could unite them again. They then enter into the city. In a technological hall, we observe a warrior in armor, who here receives our protagonist, announcing the end of the test for the newcomers. A few minutes later, one of the warriors asks about the ranks of the approved, while a blonde and somewhat arrogant man appears in the background. Observing those present, who were there, he notices someone unexpected, whom he refers to as, that's right, who works for his family. With a wicked smile on his face, the extra decides to show his own rank to demonstrate to everyone at the moment. When he shows that to everyone, ends up being surprised at the presence of Wong in the place here. So early here, that he shouldn't be here at this moment, but he ends up showing his panel there. His name is a bright name. Isolated there at the top is his. He celebrates the achievement of first place, but Wong soon interrupts him, mocking him for being the last on the list in question that he was there. He teases our protagonist's group, and they even kind of question how they dared to be interested in the rank, while one of the groups of people in the background watches. Withheld. One of them comments that they are in you, because they don't even have a single point. Kai's gaze fills with fury as he remembers a little bit of the past. He ends up remembering the sacrifice that his sister made, so that our protagonist could reach here in the Ghost Star working at Wong's house. Rod consumes himself when he realizes who the man in front of him was. Besides everything, he had basically also harassed his sister several times. In turn, he mocked him, using his sister's illness as ammunition to humiliate our protagonist. Taken by anger, he finally stands up. After he stood up, our protagonist orders Wong to shut up. Soon, the guy apologizes and informs that Hunk will soon be revealed, since the first 3 positions would also be occupied by him and his companions. The statement is met with incredulous silence. Wong and his friends end up splitting their sides, mocking the trio's audacity. One of them ironically questions if they were sure at the top of the rank. This was something that was done with just one word, while the other sarcastically suggests that someone there has gone mad. He quickly needed a companion to take care of the beast's head, but Wong, instead of keeping quiet on it, ends up attacking the group again from our protagonist, calling the trio all the attention to our protagonist too. Zhu and Wan. He asks where he came from, but the pink hair ends up surprising him with his situation, while one of the armor men observed with a clock in hand, also commenting with a nice smile on his face that he ended up preparing something special for that day, and with a somewhat high gesture, he announces that he will show the power of his group. He then on the panel there, their position began to change quickly, and the name of Zhu adds to the top, causing astonishment in everyone who was there. They question what was happening, while they watched the 3 names rising in the rank of what that they were. Almost at the end, one of them incredulous comments that, despite rising so fast, they are only 3 against 30,000 people, would not be able to beat them. The guy, at the moment, was not even believing. Wong finally goes into shock, exclaiming that this was possible. Then he starts to question how those kids there, those losers, really managed to kill the Shadow King. They refuses to believe it, but their questions are interrupted by one of the armor men, who then comments that it was better to take a look at the list, since the list of the rankers already answered his question from before on the panel. The 3 names finally reached the top, occupying the first opposition. The group watched already while a guy in armor claims there that the guy there achieved the incredible feat they really conquered. The first 3 placed in the placement of the rankers, until one of the guys, who needed to spend almost $1 billion in money and life there to buy the top one, did not get more in it. But even though, I don't know or accidentally, I'm your opponent here, and I'll still have a card in my sleeve, he asks them not to relax, because he had a thing there that no one could do. He killed invaders. So in front of everyone, he plays several rings. Like these rings are from the guys there at level 5 soon. That guy from armor already comments there that it was impossible, because he holds a watch from the L country. Those extras there, that right tried to get our black guy there. But the arrogant guy again, comments there. They're asking that it was impossible right to kill someone who was an invader. The guys were all level 5. Killing someone from here there needed a whole group is. So the same arrogant says that he was lying. They were a bunch of liars, and if they didn't see basically any passenger in the trial. So he turns to the staff and screams, if he really saw these passengers inside the Haruhiro. Then the same comments that he didn't see anything. So the arrogant guy points the finger in the direction of our protagonist, followed the arrogant screams, so that Mr. Tin Head there and tried to get him to descale him already that the boy was lying. Besides that, he was saying that there were invaders within their territory. This was impossible. The most that could happen with the boy now was to lose is going to be disclosed, and well, Tin Head there, which I believe in the fullness of this arrogant guy. Right after commenting on this, he ends up turning in the direction of our MC, but a background voice appears, commenting that there was no need to worry. It was actually, yes, some passengers appeared, but fortunately, they didn't have time to be counterattacking. They all were also surprised to hear the news that someone there managed to kill them. And also one of their strongest superiors asked him to come here to give some congratulations and praise Jiang, our Jiang Kai and his other companions for their significance, for having killed several invaders there. So that arrogant guy gets a little pale, because who was in front of him was a vice commander. So it shouldn't be a lie what he just said. So our protagonist really killed some guys from their neighboring city. So then that vice commander approaches Yanai, our protagonist approaching. Then he ends up kind of deciding to give our protagonist some extra kinds of things. Like now he will be giving our MC some high-quality military equipment that arrogant wonders what was happening. It wasn't possible. But ignoring the arrogant, the one with glasses, the commander comments that the original rewards for 2nd or 3rd place were changed from rank B to rank A. The 1st place, which is our protagonist, also ends up receiving the greater rewards. Since he is at level 16, he kind of changes the reward of Jiang Kai from A to S. The boy, upon hearing that he would receive S-level equipment, the shine there begins to appear on his face at this moment. Then his group approaches our protagonist, and at the same time, begins to praise the boy. He just thanks and found those background groups that, until a little while ago, were humiliating. The boy could not believe what was happening. The guy does not believe that our protagonist already got an S-level equipment at the moment. Then Jiang Kai ends up explaining some things already in the Ghost Star classroom. We observe one thing, that currently the Ghost Star equipment is divided into quality. But they are fine, the best. But they are fine to worsen at any time. But the best class is S. If you get a class B until it's a good thing. But if you get an S class, it was a better thing than anything. And usually also A or B level grade equipment are pretty bad. But out of nowhere you can find a little rank. You are lucky, but the rarest ones of a level is S level. And that's what he just explained. It's something every explorer desires. The arrogant guy still doesn't believe that our Kai there took his 1st place. He was at the top 1, and thanks to our protagonist's power, he now fell to position 4. And he is not liking this at all. For him, this was humiliating. But our protagonist starts commenting there, that even having a commander approving the idea that he really managed to defeat some invaders, he still didn't believe it. But at the moment, our protagonist heard there that he was humiliating our protagonist's family. However, he asks him to stop, but Edge suddenly pulls the knife from his system, and asks that our Jiang Kai prepare, because his family was worth nothing. He was just a failing and poor, and again, he starts already to judge our Kai by his sister, who was quite sick. His brother was basically a failure too, and he was just a bastard, who could not be defeating in. And at this moment, our protagonist asked him not to speak ill of his brothers, but as he broke his promise, he then gets a little more serious, but that they're the failure. Wang prepares to contract with our Jiang Kai, and he prepares while commenting that our protagonist's sister will be in good hands after finishing this kind of thing that he will be doing with him. But at this moment, our protagonist crosses him. He cuts the guy without understanding anything, just looks at his chest. There was a cut. The people from his group are in disbelief, along with our Nuan, and along with our Zhu. The extras, after seeing this comment that he was one of the sons of the family, which is one of the 12 best guilds in the country. But in the background, we also observe the commander, who there does not pay much interest in this extra, because he saw that he was just any failure. On his knees, this unhappy still wonders if our protagonist really knows what he just did, and due to what he did, he will have no escape. But there our protagonist turns and comments that fool, they're ended up attacking the family of our protagonist, and at the moment, wonders if he cares about who he is attacking. But Kai, after a little while, he just keeps watching the other fool. But thinking to himself that the opponent had 6 points of experience in a row, he ends up questioning if that there would be the strength of the family bang sword. Another man with a somewhat astonished expression exclaims that he really had managed. He recognizes the powerful technique that the boy uses. He states that it is the secret technique of the Bing family, the energy-devouring sword. He explains that although it does not seem so powerful at first glance, it drains the energy of his opponent to zero, being extremely difficult to deal with. A man with dark reddish-brown hair just stays there, just watching. He seemed calm, but recognizes the danger of the situation. Thinking to himself, even if that move was dangerous, he ends up being interrupted, because the man with dark hair asks if he knew the opponent of his friend. He confirms and reveals that his name is Lufan, and that he was basically one of the members of the Bing sword family. But for some unknown reason out there, Lufan ended up being expelled and became a wanderer. He ends up concluding that for having used some techniques out there, he ended up, in the end, not being able to return to his family. Determined, the boy with dark hair launches into combat. He shouts that he will help his friend facing the enemy, delivering some quick blows to him, but the opponent, with a sadistic expression, enjoys the situation, attacking. In turn, he on the ground wounded after the fight. He reflects a little on the situation. He thinks that in these final times, only his own strength really mattered to protect those who were precious. With a determined look, he states that he could even be the most important guy in the world. If he took the attitude of wanting to hurt the family of our Kai, he would be basically ending it all. But before he could do anything, the voice ends up retreating by this place where that they were. The reason was simple. He ended up kind of realizing that Jiang Kai was the one who started that fight from before. So since he basically finished the fight, there's no reason to continue this. So here the scene is cut to another place. Right away the commander took them to a certain place. The commander, after a long time, apologizes for the delay and shows our protagonist there the level 6 military equipment. Then there we observe someone in the background asking for Kai to open. Then the chest. Kai observes a bit. He opens there of pink hair, the same. She opens and ended up receiving some type of leather armor. The commander, after seeing that he got this leather armor, he ends up explaining that this armor ends up increasing the defense of his opponent by 16 points more and more, and can also reduce damage by 16%. It is high quality equipment, quite high defensive capability. But lastly, our Jiang Kai was missing, the one with pink hair, and our Zhu supported our protagonist to open the chest. Since it was so, he ends up opening. The moment he opens it, he ends up widening his eyes. Then immediately, our protagonist saw a system screen commenting that the equipment is not identifiable and needs to be identified first. First, below in the chest, we observe several tiny daggers. Those daggers appeared there by luck. Zhu, seeing this, is already happy to see that his friend ended up unlocking something without even being able to discover the name. So then the commander asks our Kai to get an identification card to be able to identify that our MC unlocked. So the commander gives our protagonist a crystal. Using this crystal, our protagonist discovers the name of that. This was a rank S weapon. It the strength of his opponent by 9 points. Besides that, the commander is already surprised to see that the thing our MC got is a critical hit weapon. Even though this weapon here for our protagonist is not good, because he is a newcomer, he ends up being surprised to see that the critical damage of this was not so low, and it seems that the S level is not as good as the A level. Zhu is sad for our AI, foreseeing that maybe our protagonist ended up kind of getting a type of trap, so being useless. The one with pink hair asks the commander to replace those weapons for our protagonist. The commander, then, with a charismatic face, comments there that he could be doing that favor for our protagonist, but no, he did not want to. He basically needs to test some things, and also he does not want to change. No, this is the thing he wants most at this moment. The whole group remains without understanding. Did not understand how our MC wanted something useless like this, and continuing, he comments that this equipment was not a trap for him. This was clearly a specific weapon already made for our protagonist. Because remembering a little of the last time our protagonist managed to do twice the critical damage on a wolf, managing to defeat it easily, because he managed to do 200 critical points on that wolf. But unfortunately, his critical hit rates are extremely low. If he managed to find a strong enemy, he would probably be dying before he could be landing a hit critical. But now everything changes when our protagonist holds this dagger. This dagger gives 10% more chance for Jiang Kai to land a critical hit more easily and quickly than a monster. Last time he managed to land a very low critical hit on his opponents. But with this, the chances increased a lot. Holding that high, more possible, our MC is happy, and he can even say that this was the exclusive artifact for this player V with our protagonist. So already knowing that our hero doesn't like to change equipment, he comments that now was the ideal moment for him to go back home. Since there he can be going back to the land only he gives a warning that when going back home, he should be careful, since, at the moment, there were some types of people looking for our protagonist. The kid gets confused while watching the commander leaking there in the background, but here, then he ignores this a bit. The scene here already cuts to another place on Earth. We see our MC riding a bicycle. He didn't expect he could pass the rookie trial so smoothly as he did, and also, he wondered how his sister and his brother would react when they found out he returned. But upon arriving, he ends up wondering why there were several luxury cars in this place. Here he also wonders if the rich moved here. But ignoring this, our protagonist goes back to his house. But upon opening the door, he ends up saying that he returned, but he ends up being surprised, because in the reflection of his eyes he observes a person sitting there on his couch, while around we observe several extras, holding some things, nothing threatening in hand, with some looks a bit crazy. Our protagonist gets scared. Wong is happy to know that our protagonist returned after a long time. He is also happy to know that our protagonist was so amazing in the rookie trial. At the moment, then he ends up discovering that this was the brother of that guy there that he beat and humiliated a little right before in that other world. But he tried to run, but it was no use, because an extra from the background appears and ends up grabbing him. He there ends up falling to his knees. So at this moment, he ends up appearing in front of him, commenting there that the guy, who kind of defeated his brother, not humiliating, not killing the little guy, and after killing the little guy, he returned to life there. Only now he needed some psychological treatments, and he should know that his family is that kind of family that ends up intimidating a little other families. And our protagonist ended up doing something he shouldn't have done, and due to what he did, he ended up leaving his brother offline for an entire month from that game. So he couldn't be entering for an entire month that game. So then he will be leaving our protagonist permanently offline. So he ends up picking up that his club in hand, ends up hitting towards Jiang Kai, that almost hit our Kai. He turns to see what was happening, but the next moment that would hit him squarely, a door in the background ends up being broken. Two extras that were grabbing our protagonist end up letting go, and he is thrown towards the other extra, who tried to attack our Kai. The three there end up falling to the ground. The extra is Huang's brother quickly gets up and asks who it was. At this moment, then others there. Appears the little grandpa comments that he asked for someone there to take care of the support, and also asked to warn him, so that he would be careful on the way back home. And he did not take seriously the word that he said there before. In the result it ended up in this, but for us here to really discover what will happen from then on. Before there the door is broken. After the door is broken, we observe two figures entering with a piece of paper in hand. She asks that this not be moved, because this thing he was handling was military business. However, he and his other companion do not believe it, or because the supreme commander of the city middle was here in this place. They did not believe it until also the commander does not believe in this, but he was here only for Jiang Kai, our MC, and today he offended someone he should not have offended. The arrogant guy starts sweating from his face and wonders why the chief commander was here to see Jiang Kai, the most failed guy he had ever seen in his life. And here he observed Jiang Kai getting up, and at the same time wondered what kind of identity this boy has, what kind of person he is. But the only one who was not surprised by the presence of the supreme commander here was our Jiang Kai, who also looks here with a slightly serious look and wonders why a supreme commander was here to see Jiang Kai. Without further ado, the police there soon appear arresting those arrogant ones who tried to ambush our hero, but that commander was behind there. He was taken away, but we observe there then our hero thanking the commander for saving him on this day, but still he did not believe why he came here. Only our hero here is interrupted. The commander asks that he not worry, because the commander came here only to look for him for a certain unique purpose. Since, in the rookie test, Jiang Kai and his friend Zhu, and along with our AI, our pink-haired girl, also managed to pass the test with excellent points. However, what he still did not know was that they were invited to join his army group, and they kind of end up accepting. So their goal was only to invite our protagonist, also for this business with the cigarette in his mouth. He blows out the smoke. He ends up sighing a little after a while. He comments that he had a new profession for Kai. Soon after, he ends up feeling the pressure. But then the sister of our pink-haired girl comes then with the new talks, saying that our protagonist managed to do something impossible, since their people upon reaching level 20, can be upgrading class or getting new jobs. But with each job change, the attributes of the explorer's skills could be changing to something much stronger or to something much weaker. But also, currently, many professionals are basically awakening useless skills, and they are not so useful for them. For this group of military, but this group of military here, who are first line of combat, are always looking for people who have new powers that give them the chance to have enough strength to fight against strong monsters or invaders. But, well, the explanation is like playing chess. You 1 hour have a strong tower, another hour you have a weak tower. But here today, Kai now has a profession, pretty, very strong. Then they offer to Jiang Kai, they're a thing. but before he asks himself if Jiang Kai was interested in entering the military career. And yeah, right, the military, for sure, will not force our protagonist just a little bit, because she there ended up researching a little about the family of our hero, and guess she discovers there that his brothers have a type of disease, and well, only the military there, maybe have the cure, right, the cure, to be able to cure the little guys, and if he happens to be refusing, will also be refusing the proposal of the cure of his brothers. He then stands still while there. We observe from the background, military retreating, because if by chance, our Jiang Kai wants to be enlisting in the army, it was just follow there the next day that they there will be accepting him easily, so they end up retreating, only that our protagonist calls his attention to him for a minute. He ends up apologizing, but our MC ends up refusing the proposal of being able to join their group. Soon as he refuses, we see there the reaction of the sister of our pink-haired along with the old lady beside. Then he ends up explaining the things that entering the army was the best thing he could be doing, but however, this was for new professions that are already kind of certain to have a development. Well, like his friend in the pink hair that have already discovered their classes, she was a healer, while the other was a guy of martial arts here. Our MC, he has a type of different talent, he has a new profession, and to demonstrate his strong point of view, he ends up citing a certain drunk that appeared there with the new profession. They basically welcomed the drunk and gave everything he needed, and guess what? The drunkard, with all certainty, achieved fame there inside, and only that the superior guards discovered that the class of drunk would not be helping them much in a war fight, so simply, they abandoned the drunk. So if you get drunk, you will not have an end as good as that guy there, and his goal is just to help his family. He wants to have just a kind of dream, conquer everything he wishes, and he will be doing everything right, of course, to get that. So he there with his power alone, will be getting everything he wishes, only that our purple interrupts. Our MC asks him to join her, since the end of time was coming and his power was more than essential there to fight against their opponents, and at the moment they need more than ever our hero. But he apologizes, he was not as good as they thought, since he was just someone who wanted to be protecting his family. He then was going to say goodbye, only that here our purple did not want to let only that our commander interrupts, saying that it was not necessary anymore. Seeing that he was persistent in his speech, he ends up understanding our protagonist only that here, the commander asks that Jiang Kai be careful. Since his brothers do not have much time of life, he lives a totally different life. Changes the habit would be difficult, and also survive in an apocalypse like this here alone will be difficult too. He will be protecting the family of our protagonist, also Wuong, but he will need to do a thing there. In a month, will he manage to get the money for his brother's surgery? Then, if by chance, he gets there, the money for his brother's surgery, he will be refusing the proposal of our MC to join his military team. But if by chance, of course, there, the Jiang Kai does not get the money, they will be getting the money by our MC, and will be getting the surgery to help his brother. However, he will have to join his military team. Then thus he, hearing this, ends up stopping. The wind comes there, our Kai ends up smiling, and then he ends up commenting that he accepts. He would promise that he would be getting the money in less than a month. So already from here, the scene is cut to another place. The Dark Knight, we see our protagonist leaving behind some farewell letters, since now, he has a challenge ahead, got the money faster than that military family there, and but also due to some threats from the Wong family, the three brothers can no longer be living in this place here. He should be moving to a slightly higher level area with greater security, that could guarantee better security for his family. So he will need to be entering the ghost taste there to get the money. People were commenting in the ghost taste that after passing the beginner's test, things got a little more interesting. Maybe now they would get everything they want. Our fleet here got some equipment quite good already to start then. So the first thing he should do there in this ghost taste was just one thing to join in, just one team, because fighting alone against the monsters would be difficult, since the monsters are quite strong. He then has the idea of entering there to be able to join in just one single guild. Guild serves basically as a guarantee of his team to be able to protect himself, and it was the best idea of being doing here now, to join some team then. So he ends up entering. Jiang Kai enters, but upon entering, he asks to open there a type of vacancy for him to be able to enter some guild, but the girl there, who was attending everyone apologizes, because Jiang Kai could not be joining any team at this moment. He confused, does not understand, but there, then she ended up showing a cast. Then this girl responds to our hero, saying that Jiang Kai ended up offending the Huang family, and now he was on the blacklist of all the guilds, so he understands the reason they refused him. He now will have to fight the monsters in the Ghost Star alone. There he will have to be lucky and find weak monsters, if not it was for him. So then, understanding that he has no chance of entering any guild, he ends up being teleported to another place. Walking around in this new place, he understands that after offending the Huang family, no guild will want to accept him in their guild. So now, how does it start a kind of game here? He wanted to start a game, so confused. A girl appears from behind, calling him. She thinks he was lost, was looking for some types of information. And guess what? She has information. More than enough. She has information of many things, like a cheap place where he could relax for a cheap price, for only 100 ghost star coins. This was 1 yen. She was just a girl of level 29. Well, looking at her skill characteristic that she has, Jiang Kai stares at her for a few seconds. She was emitting a kind of glow, but our protagonist ends up apologizing. He is not interested in that. She does not understand how Jiang Kai would be refusing since it was cheap. So then she starts to lower the money. She asks Jiang Kai to pay only 80. No, 80 is too expensive, so it is only 30. Then, understanding that he would not be accepting the proposal, she will be giving for free to our protagonist. She will give a free pass to him to anywhere. Well, even for free, he still thought it was expensive, but could not refuse. So he turns around at high speed. Brightness appeared on his face. He said it was too late. She could not be going back now. It was free. They're the guide she was offering him. She is disappointed to see that our protagonist managed to get around her. Well, as this was just something that dealt with, just some test skills she will be offering to leave, she takes a business from a portal. Symbols end up appearing there. She speaks some kind of weird language. After saying that, she ends up kind of finishing the thing. She started there just now. She comments there that our protagonist was in crisis, and at the moment he had nowhere to be following. So she offers our MC to be following a certain path. Well, this path was just the Valley of the Kings. This was the place where he could be going to farm some good money. Yes, he was really in crisis, and it would be dangerous, right, to stay there exposed, since the Huang family could be trying to catch him easily. But in the zone, there is a kind of safe zone, where the Huang family could not try to mess with our mech. But a probability of you managing to be leveling up is in a certain place, where from level 1 to 10 possibly could be entering there. Only that someone could be sending someone from the Huang family to kill him there. But for that, there is the path of Victoria Peak and well, right, this was a good place for him to be exploring. But you need to be at level 15 and above. If he went there now, he would surely die. Southwest, the only place he can be going is the Valley of the Kings, where maybe he has a chance of being able to deal with some monsters there. He will not have, basically, the Huang family bothering him. Since the Huang family does not let him join any team, he will be killing the monsters alone. He then thanks that mysterious girl from before, who gave good tips to our hero. Thanking, he runs, but while he was following happy on his way, we see that girl who was now wide-eyed. She did not believe he was heading to the Valley of the Kings alone, and alone was a death sentence. Well, she prepares some things. Well, these things were her bags, because she did not want to take all the responsibility of what would be happening with our hero there in the Valley of the Kings. And so the scene cut to another place. Here in the Valley of the Kings, we observe Jiang walking around there. Only Jiang Kai here wonders if this was the Valley of the Kings. Where are the monsters? Only when talking about this, he hears a roar of a monster behind. Right after then hearing this roar, he observes there a very muscular gorilla attacking a group of hunters who were having the hardest time of their life. They there asked to stand up because they needed to deal with this gorilla. He was only a level 11 gorilla, but still was dangerous. They could die if by chance they were caught right by a blow of that gorilla. So to kill the gorilla, they will have to try a little. Then they activate their best powers and abilities. However, the gorilla also he activates his hidden power. While they are in hand-to-hand combat against this gorilla in the background, we observe behind a rock our MC, who here just watched the fight. He thought the fight was intense, but wondered if he would really be able to deal with these monsters, because he was strong. But at the moment he thinks about this, he feels a strong smell there coming from behind him at this moment. That he feels this strong smell, he turns around. But when he turns, he faces 3 much stronger gorillas than before. There in front of him, he here is surprised to see that these beasts suddenly appeared on his tail. And not knowing how to deal with this, he asks for the system to help. There the system appears showing the levels of the monsters. These are level 3 gorillas. The level of that was threat level, and he should be careful, since among those, there was one of level 14. And meanwhile, next to there, we observe a system screen appearing for the hunters. They killed a level 11 gorilla, so they received the reward. They celebrate about this at this moment. Then, while they were celebrating, a tank appears commenting that he was a level TR guy, but managed to kill a level 11 gorilla. While he was boasting about this, his captain, we observe him getting happy about this. He said he was the captain, so his strength should be all that there. Even as they were amazed about this, an explosion happens there, behind, catching the attention of the group of these extras. Right after the appearance of that explosion, we observe 3 giant monkey gorillas running after a single person, who there was easily dodging the blows of the monkey gorilla. While running away, he ends up discovering that he accidentally entered the territory of these monkey gorillas. While there, he runs from these 3 gorillas. We observe the group of our extra asking for help, because seeing the fight there, maybe he would die, but it was no use. it was already too late, since even the captain ends up commenting that these guys were idiots to think of helping that guy there. That guy is already dead, since he attracted 3 gorillas on himself. Not even he has a chance of being able to deal with that. Only there. When talking about this, he ends up being interrupted by an explosion that ends up happening there behind him. Well, this explosion came from the direction where he was there. Armak. Right. He crushed one of the gorillas, throwing the creature upwards. Jiang Kai. Using his claws, he manages to do that. He stands still in a superhero landing at this moment. He thanks those weapons of his, because by using that, he ends up dealing a critical damage. With that, he managed to kill that gorilla, but we observe next the captain with his mouth open. Right, he couldn't believe that he sweated until the last of his soul there to defeat a single level 11 gorilla. But there was a guy here. Right, man. He managed to kill a level 12 gorilla easily in less than a second. They fell, but soon behind appeared 2 of the gorillas trying to catch him, but he ran. But now he wonders, who would be the next? The next one tries his luck, but at this moment, he throws that dagger of his, that he had in hand towards them, hitting him. After hitting, we observe there his gorilla companion, surprised to see that his strongest companion ended up being defeated. He smiled, thought it was incredible, since that 10% critical damage attack there was already enough. However, he used a type of buff there to increase the critical damage rate. We observe below there, the captain's open mouth. He couldn't believe that again. He killed another giant gorilla, but this one was a level 13, but there was still one left, the last gorilla. He then prepares to launch a new attack that now he shouts there for him to be careful, since he was level 14 and was much stronger than everyone who was around here, and he wouldn't believe that, if by chance, he would be able to kill that one easily again and then. But to finish off this level 14 gorilla, he has some plans. The first plan was to use more the daggers, right, to have that higher critical damage than he did there, just now on those other gorillas. And then, with these daggers in hand, he bets that he will be killing these gorilla monkey first. Soon, then the gorilla rushes towards him, but who gets closer to the gorilla faster? Were only the daggers. They then hit the creature entirely. There, the beast ends up growling. He wonders if that worked, but well, it did, since the critical damage ended up being activated there and there. He ended up killing a giant level 14 gorilla in the background. We observe the group of those extras there, who couldn't believe it. They think this is not real. Maybe it's a dream, because to kill one of these creatures, it was necessary to have a dozen people in a single team, just to at least scratch the little creature. So he wondered, who was this person? Only that here he ends up going towards the gorilla. He is happy to know that the gorillas here are weak, but now that he has 3 monster corpse cards in hand, he here now doesn't need to worry anymore. But he needs now to kill other monsters. So he jumps in another direction, leaving behind there the other extras. But from here, the scene cut to a completely unknown plan. But in this place, we observe a group of figures that here was surrounding a single person. That was that girl from before, who here ended up kind of being caught by these extras. They were looking for Jiang Kai, and she there ended up kind of managing to see our hero the last time. So they came here personally to look for her. If by chance, she from there knows of any place where Kai was, possibly would be not there, grabbed and suffocated. She wonders why they are after Kai. Then they explain that Jiang Kai ended up messing with the Huang family, and they came here only to take revenge on a certain someone. She knowing that he was strong, maybe it would be bad for her if she didn't tell the truth. She ends up saying that our hero, Jiang, ended up going to the valleys of the gods. She is then thrown on the floor. The same ends up saying there to her that if by chance, she lied in his face, he would come back, but now he will be putting the whole island on top of her. Soon then in the background, we also observe 2 of the group of the extra with their mouths open. They didn't believe why such a powerful group like this, of the Huang family, was looking for just a single one, that was this such Jiang. He wondered what kind of strength and power this guy had, but what she simply did there to help our hero was just one thing. She gave a hint where there he could be finding quite good treasures, but this was in a very dangerous place, and she gave a great hint to him, but upon entering there, you will not have much luck. She basically guided him to death. While she there was apologizing to be able to save herself from another place in the mountains, we observe him quite happy. Jiang was happy, because now he managed to kill 16 giant gorillas there. He also reached level 6 thanks to these fallen gorillas on the ground. They're the animals. We see him sad for one thing, that he will have to need to kill more giant gorillas, because these cards are difficult to get, but selling this he will earn quite good money. But while he continues there to kill these animals, he will be able to earn good money, and there he will be able to pay medical expenses for his brothers. But while he was lost in his thoughts, he hears a voice asking him to join his team. So hearing his voice, he turns in the direction of the voice. Here we observe a group of mysterious extra that appeared around there. They had 3 teams there that were hunting these giant gorillas. They were basically from elite, so joining his team would be a good thing, since they would easily defeat the gorillas. So again, he asks Jiang if he wanted to join his team, but he here was just alone. But he interrupts what he was going to say, commenting that it was all right, because he only needed just one person in his team. So the scene is cut to a mountain. On the mountain, we observe several figures of people appearing there on the top. There we observe then our protagonist, his group observing the group of gorillas below there, all level 15 in front of those giant gorillas over there. They start to devise their plans. They have 3 teams, so they couldn't risk too much. So he asks our hero to act as bait. He counting on being able to draw the gorillas' attention to another place. They will be able to get the best treasures there at the back. They will be dividing for each one of his team. Even for Jiang Kai. While they're listening to this, they hear something new, that there were elite chests there. This drew a lot of attention. He needed to get these chests to be his own, because just getting each monster wouldn't be enough to make good money. So he looks at his group, thinking he could be fighting alone, but it would be bad, since fighting a giant gorilla alone was very difficult. But well, now looking a little closer, he notices the main plan also of that side character. He wanted Jiang Kai to serve as bait to get the chests, and in the end, get everything our MC had for themselves. So seeing that he was in some kind of lost boat, he needed to act as quickly as possible. Only the group leader yells to his companions, to the danger, where there were the gorillas down there. They do this. Our MC goes ahead already right away, drawing the attention of the gorillas. He asks his brother to do a great job. Our protagonist asks to look at him. Here he was the main focus, throwing in his direction, a cutting ray hitting one of the giant gorillas, taking a huge damage, but he got angry with the attack. He then runs towards him to try to catch our big boy, but Jiang quickly runs in another direction to save himself. And going quite deep, we observe the group leader calling our fool idiot for having followed that path alone. Well, it didn't help anymore. Now that there was his group, they could be getting the best treasures there for themselves. They will be doing everything there to kill those giant gorillas. As for our protagonist was focused by several level 15 gorillas, he wouldn't survive. But here right old man for us to really find out if our protagonist will literally manage to escape from those tons of gorillas that ran after our protagonist, and will also be able to capture those side characters who were trying to take everything he had for themselves. Our hero turns quickly with some daggers in hand. He throws in the direction of the monsters or gorillas that were approaching near him. He was not the suck of the medium, and that then hits the gorilla in full, giving several critical damages to it. There it then almost caught our hero, but in the next moment, it ends up stopping, because there a huge critical damage ends up emerging over that level 15 gorilla, and the level 15 gorilla then ended up being defeated there by him. Now he thinks this is wonderful, since here, he didn't know that another gorilla monkey would be enduring other critical damages like this, but as it couldn't withstand this one, it died. But now it was a more special moment, since now he could be going to the special treasures, and now it was his turn to also be using that to his advantage. While he followed there towards the chests, we observe in the background the extras fighting with the remains of the gorillas that were still left, while others are still with that motivation, that by defeating these gorillas, they could be distributing among themselves the treasure chests. While they were imagining this, we observe in the background, right there, our protagonist, who then starts running towards the cave, and he, who was not dumb at all, he would take advantage of the situation from a while ago to be using that to his advantage. While he fought, our protagonist followed towards the cave, advancing. He ends up arriving at a more than specific place, because in that depth of that cave, he ends up observing a chest shining there, right at the bottom. So Jiang Kai approaches the chests. Jiang Kai, who there lays eyes on the chests, already understands that the chests already come with a fortune of money. He could take that and sell for a lot of money. So already knowing that he himself there can handle those level 15 gorilla monkeys, or even higher than that, he is already more relieved about that. So he can look for more treasure chests like these, and so then all happy, our big boy puts his hand on the chest. But at this moment, Jiang Kai ends up feeling a drop of something dripping on his shoulders. At the moment he sees that, Jiang Kai ends up feeling a huge pressure behind him. But looking up a little, he ends up seeing the face of a not at all pretty little creature above him, that then ends up smashing the ground where he himself was around there. But quickly he jumps back, but now back. Jiang Kai realizes that this new gorilla that appeared here was level 20, but he wonders what was happening here. There shouldn't be a creature like this here, because the system was not working. But when he talked about it, the system appears there, showing that this was an elite level 20 gorilla monkey, and it was quite dangerous, marked with a red threat level below there, showing that this creature there was not to be played with, like he was playing with those gorillas before. But the gorilla was not dumb, because it ended up falling in a direction where our protagonist, Jiang Kai, could be escaping. He finds the little creature smart, but to run from here, he uses his daggers that dealt some critical damage, even to the monsters that it hit, and well, right, Jiang Kai ends up counting victory before the victory. Those daggers end up hitting him, right, but then he realizes that the daggers were thrown a bit back, leaving our boy quite surprised. But what surprises him the most was the dagger not having penetrated his eye. And this thing was wrong. But for the system, no, because the system shows that his current attacks cannot be feeling an effect on the monster that was in front of him. Laugh. The dagger does not work. Nothing works. The point he has there that he would use in strength also does not work. What will he be doing? But he knows nothing, because there, the superior gorilla ends up raising one of his hands up. Then that hand was with everything up Jiang Kai, but after our MC is hit by that and thrown against the wall. At this moment, Jiang Kai felt danger. He there took a deep breath and tried to concentrate a little to try to get up. And now he realizes that here everything was hurting. The difference in attributes between him and this gorilla was huge. And now he does not know. Maybe he knows that one thing that will happen, one of these things, is to die. However poor as he was in life, then he thinks about many things that could be happening. If he dies here, he will have to wait for a month there. This would be a form of punishment. If you die inside the ghost's taste, and this was not good. The boy was poor, and he needed to also pay the costs of his family. That was their going up to the heights, and also if, in this case, he also lost the agreement he has there against those military. This gorilla monkey with the mouth with the fingers out smiling. There puts our Jiang fall in front of him at this moment. There, with his eyes a little closed, he saw that there was no more escape. So his brother and his sister will have to be forced to rely on those military. Only this maybe was good, but at the moment, he feels sleepy. He was very tired, so he just wanted to be resting a little. But while he closed his eyes, someone shouted, "Wake up" or "Wake up," several times. He needed to wake up and he could not sleep at this moment. At this moment, he was carried by a person. While there he was just dust on this guy's arm there. Since also his big brother here would be protecting him, he could not sleep. One thing only. He asks his little brother to stay there awake, and he ends up refusing completely to leave him here. In this battle to die by these weak monsters there. Then it is shown to us a past of our protagonist a few years ago, where the main disaster happened there in our protagonist's world. Now, waking up, he thinks, how could he be sleeping here? He was just weak, but dying now. He cannot only that the monster was about to devour him. He was thrown towards the monster's mouth. Since he ended up kind of being saved by his brother, who risked his life to save him and his sister in a battlefield of the beast gods. So how can he stay there, pretending he was feeling like sleeping, while saying these words in his hand? A new dagger emerged. He put that in hand only now a little stronger. He will be sending this monster to another universe or to another world. The daggers get stronger and stronger. Only our protagonist ends up, in the end, being devoured by the monster. The monster ends up swallowing him whole inside the throat. We only observe the superior level gorilla laughing at the situation. But minutes later, the same one, who was laughing at the situation ends up feeling something strange. Lights coming out of his eyes. There then an explosion. Well, nothing so impactful happens. He ends up kind of losing his head there without knowing what was happening. The beast falls to the ground. The system screen, then minutes later appear, showing that our hero, Jiang Kai, managed to kill a level 20 monster there fallen on the ground. We observe him standing, commenting that this was a success, since he also managed to defeat this monster by its stupidity. Since on the outside it is indestructible, but on the inside, it is not. On the inside he can easily use his daggers that deal critical damage. This was enough to kill this beast here. Jiang Kai just did the same thing he did there with that Wolf King, before, which was necessary for our fat hatting to have launched that fierce bite, and then that critical damage was done to the Wolf King. Only now he is happy, right? Because the best thing just happened there next to Jiang Kai. We observe a glow emerging in the unique direction of the chest. Now he realizes that the chest is only his, and he will not be allowing anyone else to take this chest and that belongs only to him. But half an hour later, we observe the group of extras from there, who were trying to kill the weaker gorillas. They finish off the last living gorillas after sending that. We observe one in the background shouting that they managed to kill the other. But at this whole hour here, possibly that boy, who was sent first there to advance to kill the stronger gorillas must already be dead. They advance celebrating that he must be dead anyway, since the chests that were there would basically be just for them. They would not share with anyone else, and with that, they would earn a lot of money. But minutes later, he ends up widening his eyes, because here in the cave where it was possibly the chest had nothing, not even the glow. There everything was stolen by our Jiang Kai. He shouts, what was happening all because the greatest treasure, elite treasure, was not here. And who took that treasure? And before he could do anything, one ends up interrupting him. He shouts there to his boss that before the fight started there, our protagonist entered a direction of the cave, and possibly he thought that our MC was crazy, so he didn't say anything to his boss. And also, he thought that our Jiang Kai would die easily. Only the rest of the groups are left speechless by the beast's busta. But now he calls for his captain and wonders everything. because they stayed there an hour fighting against the monsters there, to in the end, win nothing. And also the chief, their captain, was also owing a good amount of money to his subordinates. But he interrupts his extras, because here he shouts that they ended up being deceived by that certain boy, who entered first into the cave while he stood there disbelieving in life and shouting for any name that exists in life. We observe from another place, a slightly calmer landscape, but now there in that slightly calmer landscape, we observe the most important person of all our Kai, who here extends his hand towards our system that here appeared right in front of him. He comments that maybe it would be easy to get rid of those people, who will surely take revenge on our hero. But Jiang Kai leaves it for later, because now Kai is testing opening this elite level chest here, to see what is inside the chest. So then he opens, and as soon as Jiang Kai finishes opening ores, his eyes start to shine a lot at this moment. He ends up managing to find many items inside the chest, and he can clearly take all of that for himself. And also this here was the great way to be getting a lot of money, since some equipment our Jiang Kai would not be using, so he could be selling this for a good price. Since also here, the values of the minerals and the equipment of the G-Star 15 are much higher than colossal monsters or any normal monsters he finds in the real world. Now he will be making a fortune, but at this moment, he looks to the side. He ends up finding other equipment, and like the equipment was unknown, but at the same time, interesting. So then Jiang Kai ends up grabbing that, and he puts that on himself. At this moment, after putting these new equipment on himself, he notices something different happening to him, but at this moment, he wonders if this equipment was some kind of offensive or attacking thing, only that he has no time to answer. The shine ends up appearing on him. He now feels a little lighter, a little stronger. Maybe this is the effect of the equipment that can increase his agility and his strength. Only now he wanted to try to attack something. At this moment, he finds some obstacles in front of him. So then he takes those little daggers of his, and with that in hand, our Jiang Kai throws, with all the power he had in hand towards those trees that were there. But those things he threw, suddenly started to catch fire. So he realizes that when throwing that, flames appear on the tip of the daggers that are thrown towards the monster of anything, only that here, he doesn't care much about that. But at this moment, he remembers that in GST stars, there are several flame equipment. Only one of them can basically deal various damages, like alternating damages in some points of the monsters only. That it will have to hit the common fire has a very low damage and hardly can be listed in combat, or can be used only that it can also be used in Konya to counter his food. However, if you use this against the monsters thank, because they only feel tickled when hit by these daggers, that only give 10 damage per second. But what he had in hand now was this weapon he just mentioned that when thrown towards the monster only deals 10 damage. And since he knows that this doesn't matter at all, he thinks he's using it to his advantage to roast some barbecue. But at this moment, as he thinks about it, he hears a very loud roar coming from deep in the forest. At this moment, he thinks it might be a second monster, and it didn't take long for our protagonist to see in front of him several level 18 elite gorillas appearing there to face him. He quickly realizes that several of these giant gorillas have appeared, so he steps back. He now thinks about using those daggers to his advantage here. As he threw those daggers towards the gorillas, he thought that before, he had a lot of difficulty dealing with these monsters, but with this new glove in hand, he could possibly try to kill the gorillas a bit faster, since he discovered their weak point, which was the mouth. He tries to throw it into the mouth, but the gorilla, which had its mouth open, quickly closes it. The daggers end up being thrown back a bit and don't hit the monster. Again the system appears saying that his current skill is not enough for devastating effects to be effective on these gorilla monsters. Then he sees that it wasn't good. Last time he managed to defeat a monster through the mouth, but now these monsters were smart and managed to protect their mouths well. At this moment, they run, but they run after our hero. Our hero also runs trying to find a way to defeat these gorillas, since defeating them through the mouth, he now realizes is no longer possible. Knowing this, he sees that there is no escape. However, one of those Jiang Kai daggers was still stuck in the monster, but that dagger was dealing 10 damage. Suddenly, it started dealing 10 damage to all the monsters around. At this moment, Jiang Kai turns and sees how these fires were quickly emerging. Turning around, he sees several 10 damage points being effective on the monsters. However, suddenly the damage increases and the fire also increases. At that moment, the gorilla widens its eyes, because that dagger RMC threw in its direction ended up causing 2000 damage to one of the gorillas. The others are startled by this absurd damage it just took. After taking this absurd damage, we see this level 18 elite gorilla, which was quite dangerous, falling completely unconscious. But even so, that wasn't enough to kill the gorilla. However, that dagger started dealing 2000 damage to that gorilla once, twice and 3 times. The others watched this, and our Jiang Kai wondered what was happening, as several powerful fires were running rampant. However, the other gorillas, which still had those daggers stuck inside them, started feeling 10 damage effects on them, but the gorillas found this too little. However, this was their mistake. Then in that place, several gigantic fires emerged, causing 2,000 negative points on the monsters, gorillas, and he then ends up stopping. Kai is surprised to see that the gorilla monkeys were quickly all killed dead without sequences. They fall there on the ground, totally blacked out, waking up, maybe not waking up, so right and not so late. They're not at this moment. The system appears, showing that our MC killed 4 mutant gorillas. They're of level 18. At this moment, he has a small memory of those daggers. Those daggers, every second caused -10 only, out of nowhere, rose to -2000 of HP that dagger ended up taking from his opponents. So after a good while, our Jiang Kai discovers there that this glove he just got from the chest ends up adding every second a few damage points to his enemy. But since the enemy does not notice that, it ends up increasing to 2000 or can rise to more than 2000. But at this moment, he wonders if these ordinary flames of his that emit flames may be perhaps managing to pass those 200 critical damage points that our protagonist D in any monster. If he achieves this, he will be able to spread more easily, since those daggers emit some flames quite powerful, and this was already good. So our Jiang Kai ends up testing this on other gorillas that were around the gorillas, because they have a rather powerful defense. They don't end up caring about this dagger that was giving little damage, only that this dagger ends up ignoring the defense of his opponent, and that ends up easily taking away 2000 negative points of the person's life. Now, discovering this artifact that he now has in hand, he ends up discovering that this artifact is the best he has now, so now he no longer needs to worry about managing to increase his defense, since all this here will be able to take care of the monsters that have strong defenses. Later, a little that night, the giant black monkeys in the Valley of the Kings ended up knowing the night of terror fires end up kind of spreading through the forest, and that ends up spreading also among his gorilla companions. And these gorillas witnessed something they would never see in their life, since they never saw anyone who could be killing or roasting them. It is just a dagger attack, only the beasts didn't know what to do anymore. They just thought of fleeing, that there was no chance to fight against that certain human. They then that dark night with fires spreading among their companions ran there to a safer place, and they had never seen a person who sees something like a blood bar, the master devil grill. He had the goal of not letting anyone believing that they're then. So with that big dagger, he ends up hunting the beasts that were running. Since our MC as a goal has there to hunt the monsters, to get cards and a lot of treasures. So there, in that place where he was, ends up spending 2 days. 2 days in the Valley of the Kings. There, the monsters end up kind of being evaporated. We only see in the background some circles being formed after the destruction of Jiang Kai. After a good time of farming there, he thinks he did a good job, because there our MC managed to crush half a dozen gorilla monkeys in just a single night, managing to make his attributes increase a lot. His strength, that before no one cared about that was of low level, now is level 28. The boy's level ended up rising to level 7. However, what made our Jiang manage to hunt the monsters quickly in these forests in a single night? Only there was his dagger, and also that blade that he ended up unlocking in front of him. Then several system cards appear there, showing several things here on his hero will be able to sell for a good amount of money there in the nearby village. But just that will not be enough, since also there, he needed more money. So for that, he will be selling 10 elite treasure chests level, along with some groups of gorilla monkey corpse cups. And this will make a gigantic fortune for our big boy here. While our big boy followed Camille playing alone, he was sad for that, right? For playing alone, but he kept wondering what was happening with Zhu and his friend Nguyen. They may be in a good hand since they were in the hands of the military. Maybe what our MC thinks was that they were in a better situation than his. But in the Valley of Kings, in another place very close to our protagonist, we see Zhu yelling there with certain people. Well, that certain person possibly was Jiang Kai, because he got angry, because he spent days and days here, trying to find a higher level gorilla monkey, to try to crush it in his hand, but nothing of finding that our Nguyen is very happy there, right? Because she saw that she and her friend did not need to fight these beasts. While there are Nguyen and Arju were there saying such sad words, someone appears in the background, a knight, who asks them to stop talking that since he was in the tutorial lobby, where there were only newbies, where there, the monsters were very weak, only that here it was more than different. The monsters were much more dangerous, since it was also Jiang Kai who put them in the top 1. Possibly all this was thanks to him. And here we are introduced to this knightly bone. So after receiving this good motivation from the superior knight, they end up getting happy. They needed to look for more gorilla monkeys only. But still, he misses Jiang a lot there with them. And so time passes. 3 days later, we observe that group of extras who were hunting our MC. They still did not give up after receiving the order from Huang to capture Jiang to eliminate him. They get sad about that, but one in the background keeps wondering. He has spent several days, but alone was killing several gorilla monkeys alone. So it was likely that he was already quite weak. Catching the attention of the figure groups that were there, Only then he starts to look in his direction, but he starts to say that a few days ago, he found a certain guy there only that was killing alone one of the solo gorilla monkeys. Then this catches the knight's attention, and here only says that it was just one person killing 3-level gorillas. Maybe this was similar to him, weak as him. Well, this already catches his attention to want to fight him, but possibly leaving the fight that they would arrange there. Aside, he ends up showing a wanted card and asks if, by chance, he saw this person in the Valley of Kings, but out of curiosity, this was the person they were talking about just now. So catching the attention of the leader of the figure group, who ended up being tricked by our MC throwing his apple on the ground, he ends up getting up heading in another direction. He says he really managed to meet Jiang Kai, but if they don't believe it, they could be going there to see with their own eyes. Soon after talking about it, we see a macabre smile right appeared on this extra's face. So it means that Jiang was much closer than ever to them. There they end up taking a sword that was expected there from one of the gorillas. And now. Then they end up following the path. They would give an explanation to the Huang family for the reason for being stuck in this place for so long. Since now they can finally be killing this guy, he got a little shy, since upon discovering that our protagonist was being a person quite recognized by everyone, and they were not so much in favor of Jiang Kai. Only that right there at the same portal of the Valley of the End of the Gods was basically crowded with people, but most of these people, who were there, were out of pure disappointment, because they have been for more than 60 days already. Since in the same 60 days, they failed to find any gorilla monkeys in this forest, the others end up blaming it, that in the forest, out of nowhere, caught fire. Possibly, maybe this is the reason the gorillas have fled, and now, as a result, they will have to be staying there, waiting for a new beginning, for new gorillas to be placed there. But at this moment, our Jiang Kai was walking around there very happy, since he got a lot of chests. At the moment, he has 19 chests, and he managed to kill several gorilla monkeys there in that forest. Now he could be going back to the city, so that in the city, he can be selling all the chests for good money at this moment. Jiang Kai managed to already reach level 10, while our Jiang Kai, very happy, was following the path. More than right there, someone shouts for Jiang Kai to stop at the moment, and well, he couldn't move, since if he moved, he would end up with him right there. He stops scared. When he turns around, he finds again a group of people with bloodshot eyes to catch our protagonist after days and days of searching and a lot of suffering there in that forest. Finally he found him. Now he will have no more escape soon. Then after everyone's attention is called, everyone is surprised to see that there were people from the Huang family. At this moment, he wondered where this child came from, and how this kid managed to irritate the Huang family. So at this moment, he is surprised that the Huang family had sent someone to capture him. Well, since it wasn't such a surprise, because he knocked out some Huang family people himself, only that at this moment pulling the sword out, he understands that he was smart. Then there is nothing else to do, since his judgment here will be decided. He will be doing with our Jiang Kai the same as he did in the judgment of the rookies with the Huang family. And now he was getting ready, because at this moment here would be his end. They all armed with the best skills, could be killing him easily. Soon then, after getting ready, they go towards him. But Jiang Kai, with a simple movement, ends up easily dodging an attack from one of the swords that was getting close to him crouching. He tried to start to understand the story, since in the rookie's test, the Huang family started attacking our hero. He simply defended himself, but whatever here, he doesn't care anymore, because he messed with the Huang family. So he should know his end. What he knows now that our MC will die. So with the goal in hand, they end up going towards him. Jiang Kai understands that they really wouldn't give up, so to be honest, he will be ending with them here now, and moreover, they again chose the wrong target to be messing with soon. Then he grabs his machetes and throws them towards the extras, and he asks for these extras to defend themselves from these knives. Well, the request was made. They defend themselves, but some end up hitting anyway. So at this moment, they end up realizing that these knives only gave 10 damage. Smiling, they were going towards him, commenting that these skills were ridiculous. It was no use. That didn't stop them, but the damage ends up increasing more and more. They, instead of removing the machete, simply ignore. Leave that damage happening. They then continue to attack our protagonist. While he was fighting, others in the background were wondering why he was using a little knife that could be used in charcoal to light the barbecue. They start to mock his face, but our protagonist quickly looks fixedly in a direction and tries to tell him that his damage was little. But if by chance, he could increase that damage little by little, what would they do then to demonstrate this? First, he ends up choosing a target. The target then ends up realizing that something was happening from 10 damage that it was taking from itself. Out of nowhere, rises to 2000. A damage then ends up arising in him. A giant fire happens, or even the person ends up screaming in pain. The people of his group are scared by this, quickly stopping with the attack. They then call for their leader and ask what was happening. He, who there was receiving the total damage, ends up asking for help, and also tried to ask himself why a little knife to light charcoal from barbecue gave so much damage like this. But the fight was not over yet. The other people in the background end up kind of noticing the same thing happening to him. That flame out of nowhere began to grow little by little. That then turns into a gigantic flame, totally roasting the people, who there ended up receiving that knife in their shoulders. Soon, then we observe in the background asking for help, asking to remove that. Since 2000 damage ends up being inflicted on them at this moment, they could do nothing more. A gigantic fire ends up taking over the whole place. The people, who were trying to capture our hero, end up kind of being caught by those fires there. Well, soon, then the system seems to thank Jiang Kai for having kind of executed 5 players at once, gaining a lot of experience there. The other spectator, who was watching all this, saw the fire growing, and tried to understand where that fire suddenly came from. But since some crazy people tried to capture Jiang Kai, he thanks there for him, kind of having tried to attack him. Since he ended up winning in the end some rewards, there also, our protagonist will also be taking as a reward their equipment soon. Then the guy in the background opens his mouth. They do not believe what they saw. Since our protagonist alone ended with the Falcon team there, then they end up discovering that they were level 20 and above. And for the first time, they managed to see a guy with firepower kill a level 20 and above team alone, and also, who on earth would be this person? But this person, Jiang Kai, pulls out his last dagger that was stuck in the ground. Soon, then he tried to use his watch, but why my watch was not working. He tried to find his information, but his information was private. Or maybe he is a rich person. And if, by chance, he was a kind of fire mage, who used a kind of secret, or undiscovered address that no one knows in the world that is using just for himself, then at this moment, they consider him a god of fire. But okay, this is a pretty powerful theory. But okay, they might not believe this theory that just created so easily. But what he is currently is the strongest fire guy they have ever known in their life. But our protagonist, Jiang Kai, at the moment, was more caring for the points he earned. Since by killing alone, that group of people there, who tried to attack our hero for no reason, ended up giving him, unintentionally, there's something like 2 extra points for himself. But while walking through this forest, the system ends up appearing. But taking advantage of the system, he, by the way, asks the system why those extras could not find their own attributes, could not see the type of level he had, or something similar, that they could be using to defend themselves from him. Then, thus, the system explains that the duplication talent of his additional player was a lot. The additional attributes were a bit more different from the initial attributes they have, which was, like it or not, you cannot compare yourself also there with those common people. Common people could be using any kind of method that currently you won't be able to see the type of level and power our hero has at the moment. But even so, he ends up somewhat suspecting a few things, so he looks back, observing several groups of people, quite astonished at our hero. But perhaps it would be better if his powers were not detected, since this would attract some assassins on his trail. So here he ends up going to a town a little closer to the ghost taste. There he ends up going to a kind of office where he could sell some things. Entering, he asks the saleswoman to buy his wares. But at this moment, the woman attending to our protagonist feels disheartened, since she spent an entire day doing nothing. On a regular day, she can sell plenty of items, but today she is quite tired. But this changes, since our protagonist has some things he wants to sell. Jiang Kai then invokes his system. While she rubs her eyes, she opens her eyes a bit to see what was in front of her. She thought that our Jiang Kai had nothing to sell, and assumed he only had some trinkets. But she ends up widening her eyes, because in front of her she sees several very powerful gorilla cards, the same ones that had been missing for a long time. This was part of the lot where there were monster corpses, but there was also the lot from another place, which was the chests, the rare chests that no one had been finding at this moment. 19 elite chests appear in front of her that he intended to sell to her. He could have opened these chests to get better items, but after much research, he discovered that it was more worthwhile to sell the chests, because selling them might fetch a higher price. He then asks her what price she would put on them. Without reacting, she tries to understand what kind of guy was standing in front of her. Perhaps he was a chest-making machine. She is happy to see several elite chests for the first time in front of her. Thus, all thrilled, she shouts that there was no need to worry, as she had already bought plenty of those chests that our protagonist was selling. The girl then discovers that our hero, at this moment, was a customer, but more than a super VIP customer. A guy beyond superior to that, so she should give him more than special treatment. Then she pulls out her calculator. After a long time calculating, she discovers a good price she could buy from our Jiang Kai. After calculating, she finds that those gorilla carcasses could be sold for 10,000 coins of this world, but there were also the elite chests that our protagonist would also sell to her, which she ends up pricing at 180,000 coins of the money from this world and also from the real world. Wow, Jiang Kai gets thrilled. He had never seen so much money in his life. 180,000 ghost coins. He would be happy selling this to her. She quickly buys it from Jiang Kai. Thus, after buying, we see the exchange being made, and it is also explained that one ghost phantom coin is worth only about 10 real-world coins. So it means that this amount of money he has here could be exchanged in the real world for over 1 million in his real-world money. This means that this money will already be enough to pay for his family's medical expenses. Now he no longer needs to worry about the military. All happy, he walked through the capital, knowing that the promise he made to the commander would no longer be fulfilled. But the promise to the commander would be fulfilled. He will protect his family while he enjoys hunting monsters and leveling up to become stronger, so that in the future, he can better protect his siblings. While Jiang Kai was walking there, someone calls out to him, but this flame for this guy, who ended up receiving an evaluation for himself. Then Jiang Kai turns at this moment. He sees that girl from before, who gave some interesting tips to our protagonist. Well, she ends up giving some reasons for Jiang Kai not to enter the Valley of the Gods anymore. The reason was that there were strong people in there. But she ends up asking our protagonist for a few things. Well, he kind of understands. Since our protagonist ended up receiving good tips from her, she would simply ask for one simple thing from our Jiang Kai. She known more than Ryan was very anxious to be entering now in the group of our hero. So asking, even please, she ends up asking him to let her join his team. But quickly he changes the subject, saying a good goodbye. She gets sad and asks for a little more time. She wanted a lot of help from our protagonist. Well, she starts explaining some things. Well, not explaining things, but saying personal things that she was literally known by everyone as the most useless person. Even the military didn't want her. She then ends up explaining that she wanted to join the group, but she asks to forget. It wasn't that important. She ends up offering our protagonist some other interesting tips for free again for him. So Jiang Kai turns around and quickly approaches our Ryan. At this moment, he then wonders if she would be willing to abandon everything there to join his team. Well, abandon everything indeed, since there, she could be earning some good money, but she keeps wondering, after all, what kind of team would want someone like her, a failure, who can only say the fortune a person can have in life. But in the world here, there are some types of military that basically keep watching there, if you will be able to have a good power or not. But unfortunately, there, to have a good power, you need to have a lot of cultivation. But there, they did a test together with the team, but discovered that their team was quite weak. And because of this, no one wanted to invest in them, which means that they didn't have a good strength in the future. So each one went to each corner. So as they didn't have investment, she went back to doing manual work. She had to work hard to get a good livelihood to take care of her family. There, she worked day and night, carrying weights to get good money at the end of the month. And because of this, our protagonist discovered that they basically had almost the same life. One of her brothers had a basically broken life after that, and had no future, but she was definitely tired. But tired can be getting tired. She smiles happily. She ends up explaining that she was the only one of her older brothers, so she has to be the pillar to perhaps get a better future for her. Then at this moment, Wei ends up having a memory of her brother, that brother, who suffered a lot to give a good future to our hero. Jiang Kai, at this moment, ends up having some good memories of his brother here. His brother, H, a long time ago. He ends up then running after a job, since also the brother of our protagonist also ended up adopting a sister, so he ended up dedicating more and more to a hard job to perhaps give a better future for him. At this moment, there, she ends up discovering a reality that maybe she will not have a good future, so she will have to go back to a hard life, and most likely, she will not be able to log into this world anymore, so she will have to be working hard to get a better life. Maybe her brothers can get into this world and maybe get a better life than her. So she leaves, but he asks her to wait a little bit. She introduces herself as Jiang Kai. This is her name, but now she will have to log out a little bit, but not permanently. She will be back, and when returning, he will need her help for a few things, and hopes to find her there in this place to have some chats at this moment there. After discovering that our protagonist wanted to form some kind of team with her, we see a second later, her very happy. Her shine dirty again, very happy. There, even trembling with happiness. Maybe this, or maybe it is a dream, since no one wanted her there by his side at the moment. So he leaves, also commenting that if he lied there to her, he would never get money in his life again, since at this moment, he discovers that she was a good source of information to get a lot of money in the future. She there wipes her last tears, but now it's a tear of happiness. But well, her happiness could not be described simply with, "Thank you." She then runs up to our Jiang Kai and simply gives a real hug to our protagonist, and also thanks him there for his help. But at this moment, he ends up throwing a tantrum there, asking her to let go, since this was something he didn't like to do for now. While doing that, the people in the background were simply watching the whole scene happening there. Meanwhile, on Earth, Jiang Kai ends up finding himself at home. Then he ends up meeting with his brothers. At the moment, Jiang Kai wanted to give extremely good news to them. Jiang Kai comments that his brothers will no longer need to work, because now he managed to hold firm in the new job. The kid now has a lot of money. He can't believe our protagonist got all this, but is happy for it. But his sister suspiciously wonders if our hero did some kind of cheating to get this money. But suspicious as he was, comments that he got it all just in the world of Ghost Saint. But there he could finally have his brother's surgery, and that after maybe he could start all over again. His older brother is happy for his help. All he has done here must have been too much work. But Jiang Kai simply thanks him for what he did, because everything he was doing here was just to thank his brother, because he also did almost everything to make our Jiang Kai get into the ghost taste. But now worries should be left for later. Now, Jiang Kai managed to have a more stable life. Now he will no longer need to work. Now they could be living and celebrating as much as they want. At this moment, they take their drink to drink. They end up making a beautiful toast. While Jiang Kai there was happy in his last moments with his family drinking a drink, he ends up noticing something happening. His phone rings with an unknown number. Jiang Kai then takes it and answers it. This was the Supreme Commander, and now he was happy knowing that Jiang Kai managed to beat him in a bet. But he wonders if Jiang Kai was free. He does not end up asking the reason, but simply will send a car here to pick up Jiang Kai to take him to a certain place. So he ends up accepting the car, comes and picks him up. But here, on the edge of a border near a very dangerous place, we observe the disaster that happened there. It had been a long time since he came to this place, but now that he arrived here, he ended up looking in another direction. In that direction was the Supreme Commander arriving there. He starts trying to understand why the commander called him here, but he has no answer. What he has as an answer was a tremor, a roar of a monster coming from the back of the city that was on fire. So Jiang Kai looks in the direction of the noise that came there. He found a monster, but the monster was a bit bigger than he was imagining. But behind that giant beast, there appeared 3 people trying their luck and capturing the beast. But not trying, the beast jumps in the direction of the monster. The 3 preparing a strategy. They running, then going towards the monster. So after a long time, monster comes from the city that was on fire. So then Jiang looks in the direction of the noise that came from there. He found a monster, but the monster was a little bigger than he was imagining. But behind that giant beast, there appeared 3 people trying their luck at capturing the beast. But not trying, the beast jumps towards the monster. The 3 preparing ends up kind of coming up with a strategy. They running, then going in the direction of the monster. Then, after a good time, he ends up seeing a type of extraordinary leader there, fighting against a beast of god level. But currently, the explorers of G-Stars basically have a hydraulic scale that basically divides the level of people. They're basically from level 20 up, are being divided into like 6 stages, but among them, the explorers from level 1 to level 80, basically become the strongest after advancing in their own work, but their powers can only be listed in the Ghost Star. But however, from 80 to 120 there is a huge difference in power, allowing that to fight against extraordinary monsters like this one. Here below the monster, then they're standing simply MCA. The hunters try to attack it, but the monster does not stay still. It tries to retaliate against those heroes who were about to attack it, because also currently, the power you can use in the Ghost Star could be withdrawn from there and also be used on Earth, allowing people there to have the same level as you have in the Ghost Star. But currently, these powers are only used at specific moments. The moment where humans are almost suffering to die. But there, that changes the story. There, that makes history. Also, humans with these powers managed to defeat quite powerful beasts. And this was much more significant and more effective to fight against. These god-level beasts here, that these beasts that have just appeared in front of you are easily pierced. Giant holes are made in this monster by these mere hunters, who appeared. Then these hunters are recognized by the maximum, most powerful potency of the world of our hero. But Jiang also has the goal something similar to that, to have the goal of getting close to this class, or something like that. But at this moment, Kai has the doubt, why the commander wanted to invite him here, just to have a kind of personal conversation. At this part here we continue with those hunters crushing and also defeating this calamity level monster from God quickly. Jiang Kai is very happy. He is delighted to see that these guys crushed this monster quickly in a fight, but the commander quickly interrupts him. Since the monster they just defeated was one of the weakest monsters around here, and unfortunately, in these skirmishes, they have already lost some very powerful people to monsters stronger than this one. So at this moment, he asks Jiang Kai if he really wants to go back to the life he had before, that life of comfort. But he asks Jiang Kai not to be happy about it, since he won't have that life for long. The monsters will eventually reach the safe zone, and they won't be slow to do so. Thus he will also be fulfilling the proposal and the bet he lost to our Jiang Kai. But he wonders if Jiang Kai is basically backing out and doesn't want to fight the monsters. If Jiang Kai agrees to join the army, he might find a way for the Huang family to stop bothering him. And he is surprised to see that such a powerful family was keeping an eye on just one person. But the commander has a forecast that Jiang Kai might become strong in the future, strong enough that Jiang Kai's family might need his help to deal with some things. Also, he already knows that Jiang Kai only wants to stay behind protecting his family from anything. But joining the army means abandoning all that and protecting many people. Hunters in this world are here only to fight the monsters to perhaps have peace in the future. And who knows, in the future, the strongest commander might end up with a tragic end, dying in a fight against monsters. After that, there won't be anyone left to help him. He said he was fine with it, since he was a commander, and if he died protecting humanity, it was more than enough. But he won't interfere in Kai's life. He will have to make his own choice, follow a good path or the other path of comfort. But upon hearing this, he realizes that he might need to help the city protect itself. So they leave, and other days pass. Already at Ghost Star, observing Jiang Kai entering there, he did not know that the commander would be so surprised, and so optimistic about him, seeing that he might become the strongest person in the world in the future. But now Jiang Kai sets this aside, because he now has a new goal. He now wants to hunt new monsters. Since the superior level gorilla monkeys were no longer his main challenge, now he wants to hunt a new obstacle. These things he wants to hunt now here are known as lower ghost monsters, but as a power base, this creature only has a powerful scream that ends up somewhat destroying everything around it within a 10-meter radius. This monster was a monster that could be killed instantly within a 10-meter radius, but cannot be injured within a 10-meter range, as it could be caught by this creature's ability. So he realizes that fighting this thing will be more difficult than fighting those superior level gorilla monkeys before. So knowing that the obstacle was out there, he ends up following the path. However, while following, he ends up finding our Yuan, who was just waiting for our Jiang Kai. He was surprised to see that she waited all this time for him to appear again. She wakes up in pure fright, but soon recognizes him. She then says that she was really waiting for him for a good few days. He understands that she really waited for that time. So here he asks for news. She comments that she ended up finding a quite important person, who might be helping them clear some raids much faster. However, our protagonist wonders who this new person would be, so it is already presented to us. This was Ryan. With courtesy, he was the drunk Jiang Kai, who soon realizes that he was not a good person, already running away from there, leaving the two behind. And as predicted by her, she already knew that Jiang Kai did not want him in his team. But even so, she asks to take Ryan along with our Jiang Kai, since he was very obedient and would probably be following him for a good time and would be helping him a lot. He was listening to her defending him. He gets a bit shy, but still, she asks him to give a new chance. Since Ryan could be basically any kind of person to help, he could light the fire or carry the heaviest weights of our Kai, so he could not refuse such a good proposal. But he stopped at one thing she said that caught his attention. Since he was not even so interested in joining the team of North, Jiang Kai keeps his eyes narrowed, but then raises his hand, and quickly approaches and grabs Juan's hand. He was known more as Captain Jiang Kai, and now we are presenting him as a guy who did not have much talent, but now he is a talented guy and will be joining their team. So as captain, he should be taking him there to the certain boss, the Botch, who was the most powerful one they should defeat. However, our Jiang Kai became basically too realistic about things, even starting to confuse things like family. She in the background ends up explaining some things that make him understand a little more about Jiang Kai. So we see in the Valley of the Elite Monster Kings, in the Ghost Kingdom of Bach, an abandoned house. But from the door of that abandoned house, we observe a somewhat thin and malnourished hand. Minutes later, the monster appears there, roaring up. He was a level 20 monster. While the beast walked through that darkness, we see the silhouette of two people in the background. So before he could do anything, he already warns that they should be careful, since this monster here was much more powerful than those elite-level gorillas. Here, they would only have a single chance to kill the monster, since they would have only one attack available in 10 minutes. Beyond that, it is likely they would die quickly. However, this was a unique opportunity to end it. However, while Jiang Kai, understanding strategy, starts saying some things, making her in the background quite confused with what our Jiang Kai was thinking. Our hero asks whoever was talking in the background to shut up, but she, who was just quiet in her corner, wonders who was shouting. She was not, so he turns a bit backward, but when he turns around, guess what? He sees the drunkard having some drinks while at the same time yelling at his wife. Here the little guy will make the next toast to his wife. However, when he talks about it, the monster in the background ends up hearing them talking. At this moment, upon hearing it starts roaring loudly, and then jumps towards Jiang Kai. Then he just watches the monster opening its mouth, and then with some things starting to appear in its mouth. Now frightened, Jiang Kai wonders what this Ryan was doing. Juan ends up saying before that this guy was joining their team just to help, but this was not real. She apologizes for doing this. She just ruined the team. Meanwhile, the monster ends up roaring towards Jiang Kai. However, he opens his arms to defend himself, while we see only that drunk sleeping on the ground. But suddenly, a shock happens. The three of them stop abruptly. At this moment, our protagonist realizes that there was a chance to fight against this monster now. Seeing that we could no longer do anything, we observed in the background just our new integrant asking for Jiang Kai to step back and retreat. Now that it was not the right time to fight against this, and the monster came at full force with its mouth open in the direction of Jiang Kai, but at that moment, we observed the drunkard. However, the drunkard was enchanted with the beer, commenting that in front of him was a beauty, and how such a beauty passed by him without him noticing. And then with his mouth open, he falls face down on her. He ends up kind of hugging her with all his strength, enough that he pushed her a little back. The two behind stayed there, not understanding how this was possible. Now the drunkard was on top of the monster, and now he thought that fate unites the two. This beautiful lady would be having a nice date with him. Then he ends up putting his hand on her face and asks what happened to her, or why she had such a big mouth, but didn't care, because now he would be making good use of it. Meanwhile, we observe her asking him to move, since the skill used by Botch wasn't enough to control our Ryan, so maybe he was the only one who managed to get rid of it, but now it was a more than perfect moment for us to attack. She, who was under Ryan's control, so Jiang Kai takes those small weapons in hand. Now, with those small daggers in hand, he simply throws them all in the direction of Botch. While Jiang Kai's daggers approached Botch, we observed our Ryan there, who did not forgive even the hole. He just asks this beautiful lady to prepare, because now they will have a beautiful encounter. Their eating should be right here, but well, he was getting closer and closer to the monster's mouth. However, when he was about to get close to deliver the final touch of the final kiss, an explosion descends, startling Jang and the rest of his group, and well, the explosion ends up frightening everything around. After a beautiful explosion happened, we observed Ryan just waking up to reality, wondering where his wife was. Soon, then he falls to his knees realizing that his beautiful fiancée, who was to marry him, was perhaps dead, and he blames Jiang Kai for seeing that. Jiang Kai blew up his wife, so he ends up crying, saying that she was his wife. What motivated him to live? So there is nothing more to do. He will now be giving up on everything, and well, the end came for him. But the scene cuts to the two commenting on what was happening. Juan, if he was crazy. So she says that this Juan tends to get a little crazy in the head when he drinks some beers. But now she calls her captain and asks him to go with her to get some treasure chests. Botch's treasure chest. But while she advances to get the treasures, Ryan stands still. He sees that this Ryan was quite strong. But he was strong when he was drunk. Well, he attacked that monster without even thinking twice. Now he realizes that maybe the drunk class has some advantages in fighting against these monsters, since this Ryuan doesn't fall under the monster's spell. So saying that, approaching with her beautiful chest, but she looks at Jiang Kai, and Jiang Kai was happy. Now he would be using Ryan as an artifact, to deceive Botch's defense. And there he is, making her scream in fear, and he laughs there, even loudly. She is left wondering why Jiang Kai was so smiling out of nowhere. This was scaring her, so they advance to another cabin of that monster. In the other cabin of the witches, we observe the beauty leaving the cave. She comes out all happy. She already starts to try to scream, but at this moment, a noise is heard from the side. She turns around, quickly to see who it was. She sees Jiang Kai and Ryan, but Ryan was tied up by one, and now he asks Ryan to make his decision. He could choose whatever he wanted, and then he chooses, since he just found a new beauty. The kid already falls with his tongue out, but the monster ends up shouting in the direction of our Ryan. But this doesn't affect him. Instead of being stunned by the shout, he gets even more in love with her beauty. And guess again, he ends up giving her a tight hug. So there we observe that they will have a night more than passionate. Jiang Kai realizes that his sweetness was enhanced to another level. They can now farm level as much as they want. Now with their daggers in hand, he throws those daggers in the direction of the wife of our Ryan. The boy was already almost giving some nice kisses to them, but well, at this moment, the daggers end up hitting the monster. The monster doesn't even notice, but the explosion then happens, and the arrow is shown to us Ryan, who also ended up being thrown upwards after that explosion. The system minutes later appears saying that the other Botch was defeated by Jiang Kai. But at this moment, the scene is shown more closely. Ryan here, who here now, was falling in the air again. The beasts below ended up exploding his wife. He wonders what kind of beings they were to do this to his beauty, but he didn't have time to find out, as he ends up falling next with all the force to the ground. Jiang Kai said that he was a good boy and well, managed to make a nice meeting, but had a meeting quite ruined by them. The idea of tying him was quite good, right? But things managed to be faster than last time, but this time they didn't even need to hide behind a bush. They ended up with the monster without needing it. But again, they go to the next witch's house, and guess what? There he explodes again his new wife. And again he asks them to stop, since this would be his 11th wife that Jiang Kai exploded. He fell, and in the cabin, we see a sad boy. Since now, it was 23 wives that ended up being lost in these explosions of Jiang Kai. He is sad about this, but not for them. And if the two end up being happy, their eyes shone with the treasures. So they continued. Now here it passed 35 wives, that ended up being toasted by Jiang Kai. Jiang Kai didn't care about this, since what mattered in the end were the chests that were worth a lot, that all fell in front of Jiang Kai. But now that he defeated several 35 monsters, he already knows the potential of Ryan, so he could already be hunting more monsters. But after 35 of Ryan's wives ended up being dragged up, our protagonist managed to level up 2 levels. Then at the moment, our boy, not here, already reached level 14. Now they look in the direction of Juan and realize that Juan was heartbroken to see that 35 wives ended up dying there, so they should be helping him calm his heart. While there, she stayed close to Juan to keep the boy's heart steady. We see Jiang Kai holding 2 cards in hand, and he was also surprised to see that he managed to still collect 2 cards in those abandoned cabins. Now he could be enhancing his skills. One of these skills that could be enhanced was the technique of praying for rain, that used by someone with a strong mental resistance could cast an extremely powerful rain. This skill, you are on top of a mountain, you can widen the mountain almost all of it. So knowing that he couldn't be using this skill, he throws the skill then in her direction. She didn't believe that in front of her was a skill card, and if, at the moment, she thanks Jiang Kai for giving her a new chance. Since now, she not only has one unique skill that was the D in action, she now will have 2 here. Maybe from now on, she won't be useless in a battlefield. And again, she thanks Jiang Kai for allowing her to become a person, perhaps stronger. She for thanks. Jiang Kai ends up hitting her head on the ground. A rooster even dirties her head, but she ignores it. Her happiness was more than 1,000. She shouted with the little card up, and saw now that it was no longer a waste. Meanwhile, he also has another card. The other card ends up allowing him to use that in a specific skill he wants, but however, when using that, it will automatically disappear from his inventory. So he ends up using it to test things. A blue glow appears there minutes later. He ends up able to awaken this ability. It was the ability to steal. She ends up being an extra ability, making the system appear in front of Jiang. It appears in front of our Jiang, showing his ability. His ability allows him to be more, but this hacker will only be useful when he is inside a casino. In the casino, he can use his ability as much as he wants, so this means that the effect of it was not to stop much. The system agrees that it was not to stop much, but he ends up somewhat irritating with the system. However, he is also pissed off with another thing. This new ability also allows him to steal a bit of the abilities of other people, but only steals half of it. For example, if a person has 100%, he will only steal 50% of the person's power. But at this moment, while he was lying on the ground, out of pure disappointment, we see our Ryan, who has just woken up. Now that he wakes up, he wonders what is wrong with him. He feels a bit bitter, as if he had lost several wives in the same day. So to recall a lot, she recounts that he ended up losing 35 wives last night and such. He was quite sad about this. However, after recalling all this, the boy vomits. He vomits in the air, understanding that he was just a failure, who hindered the Jiang Kai team. He ends up asking Jiang Kai to take him out, that he was just a failure, who hindered Jiang's team. He ends up asking Jiang to remove him from his team. He was just a person, who was only getting in the way of his team. But at that moment, Jiang Kai extends his hand with a new outfit for him. He comments that this guy wasn't useless last night. No, if it weren't for him, he certainly wouldn't have been able to defeat those lowlifes there. No way. So again, he asks him to stay on his team, because if it weren't for him, they would probably have been defeated by those monsters at that moment, and now he was almost the core of the group. But even so, he asks to be taken off the team. He was just a guy, who was getting in the way, but he insists again, that he stays, and he also asks for Ryan to stay as well, as she did a great job the night before. She is surprised and happy. She turns towards our Jiang, and here's the scene where she saw Jiang, the extremely wealthy guy, who handed her an infinite amount of money. They then, understanding Jiang's kindness, end up thanking him again as the 2's faces lit up, saying that now they will follow Jiang to the ends of the earth. He asks them not to do that, since what he said, there would go on until death. You should notice that this wasn't at all good. He feels a little hesitant about it, but for us to know if our protagonist will actually accept them permanently in his team, we observe that the stall owner is very happy with the return already of his best customer, and he also could not already be believing this, since in the total of the price that he will be selling there for them, of the loot from the chests and items that he has will be reaching a very high price. Like now, he will be able to sell all that stuff of his, there for 80,000 ghost star coins, but in total, all these coins there in the real world will rise to 8 million. And the cure already of his sister and his big brother there will be totally covered already. Maybe, if cure now, will have no more difficulties. Now also that does not need to worry about hospital expenses anymore. He can do one thing. One of these things was to buy some new pants or new clothes. And so the kid does there. He buys some equipment that gives an upgrade to his strength. So at the moment, he only buys a leather armor that gives some more points to his defense and also agility. But the effects of his gloves were also identified, which means that those gloves there will be used also together with that critical damage skill that he awakened. there also his damage increased a lot, and so then he leaves that outfit that was by leaving. Then we observe now that he was now more confident within himself. Now with all certainty he can go out and fight a level 20 explorer easily, but now more confident than ever. We observe from another place our Ryan there. He approaches Jiang Kai, saying that he modified things for him there. So then, running with stick in hand, he asks him to take that dagger and look more closely at the modification he made. He then throws the dagger with all his strength in his direction. Our protagonist asks him to stop doing that, because even being just a guy who has a B skill, he will be basically causing a big mess Jiang Kai with this dagger there. So at this moment, we observe that the dagger almost approaches close to our hero, and that is different from his eyes. But Ryan asks for the thing to return to him. That stick that was holding him throws up the dagger that was about to get close to our hero. We observe it turning around and it pierces the stick and then stops on Ryan's hand. The reason for making this modification was simple. He noticed that Captain Kai was always needing to get close to his opponents that he defeated, and due to that, a type of mistake could occur. The monster is alive. He could get screwed a bit, but with this, he can simply call the name of the knife and it will return to his hand. But even if he decides to throw this dagger away, he can be using a charm that is inside it, that can be put into another knife soon. Then he is very happy about this, saying that he no longer needed to get close to his opponents to recover his dagger. Now he has more chance to see it from any monster. But to make things better, Ryan comments that this dagger there, when in the air, it can also cause a little damage to the opponent or the thing you are trying to hit in the air. And again, he thanks him. He did not think that one was such a genius as he was. So then he comments that he only learned all this from some people. However, half of these things were with Jiang Kai. But Jiang Kai said that he swore to God that he had never taught this to anyone. But talking about this, a lightning strikes the background, causing a giant scare. Our protagonist. Minutes later, the place starts to rain soon. Then we observe there Jiang Kai turning around to try to understand what was happening. But when he turns around, he ends up finding our new member, who here is happy about the new skill she was doing all this. And she managed to learn a little of this skill, although it is not so useful. We observe Ryan refuting her, saying that this skill could not be so useless, not since people around here were running from her rain. We discovered that this rain is not even a common rain, because when touching that rain, he realizes that the rain is heavy, which he can modify the movement of his opponent. However, this ability can be so powerful that it can also be sending some extras to another world, or to that she discovered that she has the potential to become stronger. We observe her there with her high ego, saying that she managed to learn the best ability in the world. But now that Ruin might be entering the battlefield, their Ryan also has this rain ability. They became much stronger, but at this moment, an extra passes, annoyed, commenting, what was happening with this rain? This rain was interfering with all his plans. They should be taking the equipment to the Huang family. At this moment, Jiang Kai discovers that the Huang family was coming up with another strategy. Again, he asks to wait a minute, because he wanted to know more about this crazy strategy of the Huang family. So they start commenting on some things. Also that here there is no internet access, so it can't be explained better. But the other gives a brief explanation that the Huang family is taking 200,000 people to a dangerous forest there to defeat a certain boys defeating boys. He will be able to expand more his territory here in the ghost world. Also he wonders if he does not know the new news. This new news is basically that everyone here is responsible for the rise and the new fall of the new world they end up leaving. Seeing that this idiot was interfering with their plans. Moving forward, we observe that our protagonist was coming up with a plan. Since the Huang family, at this moment, was hunting a stronger boss, there will also be another family that will be after this boss too. So he realizes they discovered that a specific, stronger boss of all decided to act, which also means that the land may be in danger. So for this people will be using all the power they have. If they manage to defeat the boys, they will be gaining many rewards. But to get such equipment, you need to defeat the monsters in the Ghost Star. However, you need to defeat him to also open new territories. Only the monsters of this Ghost Star are divided into high and low levels, and they are known as Commander level, another as King level, and the last one is the map boss. But between them, there is the King level boss. To defeat a King level boss requires hundreds or thousands of people to fall into hand against it. So he wonders if the Huang family changed their fighting style. As said before, thereby our hero in that also. All the people in the world are responsible for the rise and the fall of the monsters. And someone certainly has the right to be fighting against the monster. Monsters will be defeated sooner or later. So here, at this moment, he wonders if Jiang was not telling the truth. He should be dropping everything here, but following the same objective as him. Fighting against the monsters to protect his country. And so he would do a test. So we cut to another place. At this moment, she was wondering, or the why was doing this frozen island. But since he came here, he wonders why came to this place, if he wanted to buy a single piece of cold protection equipment. But before they could start doing anything, he hears someone shouting this, that shouted, ask them not to keep walking around, since they could not be walking in this place before the fight could be starting. But this was his first time in this territory, so he wonders why he could not walk around here. So for this, he ends up explaining that below this frozen island, there is a monster's lair, so they could not be walking around here, and what they were doing here was simply disturbing the life of a certain monster that lives there. And as he says, he was disturbing the life of a monster. We see the monster appearing. This appears there. He was a level 22 monster, and the remains of the two extras, who were in the background, are left open-mouthed, but also happy to see that these newbies here would already be dying so early. Since this was a level 22 monster to defeat, it was necessary to have a level 20 team. And also, as everyone knows, these Call are quite good in a fight, and you won't be able to easily defeat a guy like this in real life. Soon, in the background, we see the two asking Jiang Kai to be careful, since the monster was dangerous, but the monster soon attacked, hitting Jiang Kai completely. However, Jiang Kai quickly used basically his cloak to dodge. We see him behind this monster now. Before he had thought this monster was something like a powerful monster, but in the end, he realized this monster was just a trash fish. Even so, he jumped behind it and delivered a knee strike to its neck, but he also used a small explosion. This explosion hit the monster squarely. The creature is toasted. Soon in the background, we observe the group of those new extras with their eyes wide open, and they don't understand how it was possible. They managed to defeat the mule easily without even having a strong team. So if he managed to do that, it means he is one level above level 20. But the leader of this group, who is locked in and ease that he was killed by a mere teenager, but also the monster was killed with just one hit, not even knowing if it was several. And now that he has completely ruined the body of that monster, he realizes he is no longer feeling uglier due to having move. But now he notices that his strength is 76 points, while giving a critical damage shot or lower. The damage he managed to deal was 15th and 200 to the monster. This also doesn't count the critical damage bonus he can also give to his opponent. But even if he doesn't want to deal the highest damage he can in his life, these daggers now in front of him will do the work for him. But at the height of a level 20 monster, his damage currently can tank it entirely, which means he can now kill monsters from level 20 and up. However, before he can do anything, he stores his daggers in his system. In the background, we see the two approaching him. So before they could get close, he said that he had taken the card from that muck, which he could use on himself. But now he wonders if the three above can direct him to where Huan's family is. So they introduce themselves as a younger brother, twin brother, elder brother, and they would guide our protagonist to Hui. Since they knew of our protagonist's strength, so they should simply guide him to his boss, and from there they wouldn't need to worry so much about our hero. As they advance, he comments that he didn't want to let those two from his team get involved in personal matters with that Huang family. At this moment, he also discovered that those three guys are basically blood-related siblings. However, we also find out that they basically know the location of Hong. So he wonders why Hog hasn't appeared here until now. Before he can do anything, someone in front appears called by Jiang Kai. And at this moment, he also wonders if this is the so-called Huang Wei. Well, the reason for meeting this Huang Wei was simple. He just came here to fight alongside his country, because maybe with his help, he would surely destroy many monsters. However, as soon as he talks about it, we see a ray of light approaching. Jiang gets a scare, but to avoid being caught, he moves back a bit, and we see that Hang Wei attacked him now. Behind, he wonders what is happening, why Hang Wei was attacking, and also, he is just here to make peace with them. He wonders what kind of peace this is since he killed him the first time, which made him go through several psychologists, and he suffered a lot at the hands of those guys, trying to recover the sanity he had before. Now he comes with this talk of peace, and he went through many things, and now he just wants revenge. He wants to end, perhaps all the damage that happened to his life, but at this moment, he comments that even his family asked him not to mess with Jiang Kai, but this was not something he should follow. Since now, the goal was also to destroy the board of this place, and at the same time, he would be taking judo with our protagonist, since he also wants to use the merit of having defeated our protagonist to gain some blackmail from that old man before. At this moment, Jiang Kai can't believe this guy's pathetic motivation, but then he advances towards Jiang Kai to finish him off, since, by finishing him off, he would gain a lot of fame. So first, he would be taking the military merit that our protagonist managed to take from him, and also it would be a way to punish his sins or not, and so he will use the new sword he has to finish him off. He almost catches him, but now he notices some things, and thinks of trying to forgive this guy, but he discovers that he doesn't deserve forgiveness. But now he thinks that this Huang needs to be defeated. But also if he wants to know some choices, it was that he chose to try to help this guy to become his team, but now he had no choice but to eliminate this guy again. The group of his starts to crack up the face of our MC, so that one is laughing at his face until a little while ago. But then he stops with his eyes wide open. He opens his watch and discovers the new things about our Jiang Kai. One of these things was that this kid had already reached level 14, like too fast. Before he was at a much lower level. He even did something that even his young master hadn't done yet, but at this moment, it was late. We then observe that he used those flames of his. The flames go up to Hang Wei, but Hang Wei only sees some damage happening on him. The damage was only 200, but then suddenly it goes to 2000. He doesn't understand why a fire like this was so strong. His group, worried about their boss, tries to help him. Well, their attempt to help was just asking if he was okay there, in the middle of that fire. But Jiang Kai asks them to relax. Since if by any chance, his companions didn't want to end up like he's ending up, they shouldn't bother him or stop him. But he asks them not to come at him. But also surprised, he wonders how it was possible that these equipment here could defend against any damage or anything. But it wasn't enough to defend against those attacks from Hang Wei there. But before he says that if the young master of his might be defeated by our Jiang Kai, he asks his group to finish off our Kai. Their request was made, and the 3 or 4 there organize in front of Kai to attack him. Well, now facing those beasts, he still wonders if they really want to mess up his plans. Since they won't back down, he ends up choosing a perfect plan. So now he will finish them off for having interrupted him by quickly defeating Hang Wei. To finish off the extras, he throws his dagger in their direction. The daggers then hit each of the extras. The extras, instead of moving, just stay still, only receiving the damage test. We observe that the damage was little, and they mock the face of our Jiang Kai, thinking that this damage would never be enough to end their lives. So he is heading towards them to finish off their lives. He was getting close, but Jiang Kai raises his hand with that solution. Now, he asks for his dagger to come back to him. So it is done. He doesn't realize what was happening. That dagger then ends up piercing him from behind. He wonders what that was or why that thing came back to him. In the end, he ends up being caught by the dagger from Jiang Kai. Jiang Kai increases the fire of that dagger to the maximum level, receiving 2000 damage automatically, and he only ends up watching the beast being roasted in front of him. But the others in the back are scared to see that daggers circling to hit their opponent. But as seen now, he easily defeated a guy who wasn't level 10, but a guy of level 32. The guys are surprised to see that their captain was defeated, but it's not over yet. There were still people alive. Meanwhile, we observe in the background the extra is now his turn. He asks him to get ready. At this moment, he then throws his dagger to hit him. He guesses it hits him right there, and after he was hit by that dagger of Kai, we observe a fire growing again in front of him, scaring the rest. The rest wonders what kind of skill was this, and they end up creating theories about our MC. They wonder if he might be some kind of powerful specialist pretending to be weak. Their leader, Hang Wei, asks them to stop the nonsense, and then asks them to attack that guy again and defeat him once and for all, as he was just a mere extra. His order was to be obeyed, and it is being obeyed. Even so, they go after Jiang Kai, approaching, but from behind. We observe Wang Gu opening a smile on his face, as we see that one of the guys there had a specific skill that was to attack assassins, and well, our protagonist no longer had any chance of surviving. What could happen to him here now was to meet his end, but that's what he thought, because minutes later, we see a giant fire happening again, and the two who were there were totally defeated. He, pale, and completely shocked by what was happening, without reaction and trying to understand who this guy was, and more. Jiang only gets closer to him, trying to say that he made things difficult. So maybe the difference in power is that trash down there that only has money and armor to fight. But this was impossible. The level difference was so big. How did they lose like that? Then our protagonist, ignoring his question, advances. He pulls out his sword. He left the past in the past, but now Hang Wei disappointed him. But now he wonders if Wang Gui was still determined to want to kill our hero. Approaching, they wonder what he would do. Our MC said he wouldn't do anything, but since he wanted to kill our hero, he can't just stand here listening to what he had to say. He also has to be acting to defend himself. Last time he caused him some trauma, but the trauma was small. However, now, let's cause bigger trauma. He then raises his sword up high, and he only saw a flash of a sword approaching him. Minutes later, in the background, we hear a scream. He was screaming there, and then, after several minutes, we see him looking at his system. But now he was surprised to see that killing explorers gets him more XP than usual. He kills a level 30 guy, and that rank makes him automatically level up to 17. However, because he kind of killed all these people here, he ended up receiving a system punishment. He is now a bloodthirsty assassin. At the moment, he is surprised by this, standing still looking at the system. He stares at it, but stops and thinks that getting a title of bloodthirsty assassin wasn't a bigger title. Maybe it's the highest punishment someone can reach here in Ghost Star. So, having this title, people on the whole map will be able to see you on the map, and well, they will hunt you down. but you have a chance to recover the title you had before, just by killing monsters or earning system rewards. But now that he stopped and thought, he also discovered that the system also increased our protagonist's punishment by 2 times. So we also found out here that if he were killed, people could be stealing 30 times more of his experience. He could also return to level 1. This was bad, and he couldn't go anywhere anymore, places that are crowded with people, and he needed to remove this thing as quickly as possible. So he runs at the moment. Then here we cut to a scene at the Huang family headquarters. In this scene, we see their leader yelling at his subordinate, because they didn't protect his son. He was also killed. He made a big deal with him, because he needed that guy's son, at least, to fight against some monsters, to get a lot of titles and power in this world. But now that the so-called loser died, what should they be doing here now? He bangs on the table and comments that they needed to kill the king boys. By killing the king boys, they will have a military merit quite high, and they will be able to do whatever they want when they manage to do that. And now their goals were to kill the boys, but killing the boys was difficult. However, their people were bloodthirsty to do that, and most likely they would succeed. Now that the search has been made, we observe an hour or half an hour later, somewhere on this frozen island, Jiang Kai being interrogated by his group. She wonders why Jiang Kai has an extra title. At the moment, he cannot explain this, as it is likely that some groups of extras are already trying to look for him. So then he grabs her hand, saying he needed to do some things. But at this moment, they hear the sound of a trumpet. Well, that was the sound of the beginning of a war. We observe that this war was caused by something. And what Jiang Kai already thinks is that the Huang family has already started a war so early. While wondering what is happening, she asks Jiang Kai to look in another direction. And looking in that direction, they realize that the frozen lake has cracked. From within that frozen lake, we observe a monster coming out. Not just one, but several monsters that were frozen, but are now there. ED not to attack just anyone. Kai's ice group is already worried, seeing that something is going to happen to them. Now, at the peak of the ice mountain, several higher level much stronger monsters decided to appear. What they were seen doing was preparing. They hide, because we observed that Jiang Kai's group was not in the mood to fight against these monsters. But at this moment, while they were scared, we observe someone shouting for them to get ready, because now they will be fighting against a fierce boss. Yes, this boss is the king boss. Now, then they could already be fighting against the monsters, because as soon as they manage to defeat these monsters, it is very likely that they will receive many achievements. But these achievements do not even come close to the main achievement, which is to dominate this territory. With this territory, they will achieve the greatest power in the world. So they should be fighting against these monsters, even if the leader tells them not to be so worried, because even if they die here, they will surely defeat this boss. So with that said, the warriors were motivated, and they advanced towards the monsters that were in front of them. The monsters also advance. At the moment, we observe that drunkard from Jiang Kai's group asking them to also prepare to fight against the monsters, and that they should take the opportunity to kill the king-level boss. But for now, he doesn't need this thing here. But for now his group is left without understanding anything while the battle begins. The Huang family should be very worried about the monsters, and what he means is that the Huang family won't be bothering him now. He will just stay here watching them fight against this fierce boss. Yes, this was the king-level boss. They could be watching to learn some things. As soon as they came up with their strategy, we observe the Huang family group advancing towards the boss. But the boss quickly gets up, quickly destroying half of the extras there. Jiang, while in front of him appears an extremely strong boss. One of the Huang family guards freezes up, not even moving anymore. He couldn't stay still. He asks the group not to be afraid, because this was a high-level stinky fish, but they were at an advantage. So he asks everyone to get excited and go after it. But the excited one ends up going straight into the monster's mouth. The stinky fish quickly closes its mouth and swallows the leader of the Huang family group. No one could save him. He was devoured while the group behind there doesn't understand how the strongest guy in their group was devoured with just one bite. And now they don't know what they should be doing while they were thinking about what he would be doing behind us. We observe our Jiang Kai. Is it normal for a fishman like this to be so strong? An explorer in front of this monster was basically nothing. But he discovered one thing. To defeat the boss, it was necessary to kill the boss, because if the boss doesn't die, the fishman monsters will keep appearing infinitely. So the key to victory against these fishmen isn't the dozen or thousands of explorers, but an army of fishmen. Meanwhile, we observe the Huang family's group advancing towards the boys, because they understood that the boys was their objective. At this moment, another one appears, another commander, but now with a flaming sword. He asks them to finish off the monsters, but he knew that even so, it wouldn't be enough. So he asks his group to help him with some buffs, to maybe kill this boys in front of him. It was necessary to use all his power, so it was said and done. They used all their maximum and total power to end the boy's life. Then an explosion takes over the entire area, and we observe the two with their mouths open, and now it seems that the boys is about to die. but Jiang Kai says, no, things don't seem to be favoring the hunters. Maybe the victory is on the boys' side. And so, he finds the boys using his ability with his eye. His abilities seem to be very strong, but through his ghost eye, he can see that they are at a disadvantage. So the thing our hero kind of suspected happened. Their attacks didn't even scratch his defense, and with their mouths open, they don't understand how it was possible. They used their strongest power and couldn't even scratch the monster's defense. They attack the boys, but now the boys wants to do the same. So the boys attacks those hunters from the Huang family with one blow. All the strongest hunters were knocked down. Some of them were thrown up in the end, others fell. However, the boy still says that they are weak, and he asks for stronger people, because the game he wanted to play wasn't even worth it. He didn't even warm up for the main fight. On Jiang Kai's side and the Huang family side, everyone is open-mouthed to see that the boys killed all 8 superhumans at once. 8 superhumans, the strongest ones, were defeated, but an idiot starts running towards the boys. And Jiang Kai asks for him to come back, because he wouldn't even be able to scratch that creature. Maybe he wouldn't even make it. The Huang family's group even got discouraged from everything. But the boy's spear goes towards that unknown guy, who appeared. But he also raises his spear, and puts it in front of the boys. That spear ends up being stopped. The boys is surprised, but so is Jiang Kai and his group. That guy alone managed to stop the boss's attack. Stopping that was almost impossible, but he's sad to see that most of his group sacrificed themselves for that filthy thing to maybe be defeated. He also tells the boss, if he thinks humans are something that can be played with at any moment, but in the name of his fallen, his weak creatures, he will be ending this human again. But this was what he was thinking, because that human charges at him with his spear in hand, and he manages to deliver a blow near his shoulder. That blow was enough to cut it. The blow was powerful. Our protagonist even thought that the blow would be strong enough to break that defense. For this guy to become strong, sacrifices were necessary, and those 8 superhumans were sacrificed, so that this Jie Fong here could become the strongest to end the life of this boss. But even without this buff, Jiang Kai was an extremely powerful guy. But now Zhang Fang, who alone was almost incomparable to anyone, could kill anything. And so he delivers a few blows to this boys. The blows were fierce. That would certainly kill the boys quickly. Like if nothing unexpected happened in this battle, he would win quickly, and victory was certain. But the level 32 elite monster appears. One of the guys from Huang family's group ended up detecting that there were many monsters suddenly appearing, completely surrounding them. He doesn't understand how that was possible, which means that someone stronger just appeared. But the monsters that are being summoned are all level 30 and above. Both everyone who was there couldn't believe that this was possible. And now what could happen is that Jing Fong could be focusing more and more on the boys, which means that, for sure, they will win, but over time. But now, based on the 5 levels, Dion Patient, who ended up kind of discovering it on the battlefield, they are divided into 5 zones. There's the elite zone, the general zone, the leader zone, and lastly, the boss zone. And after a good amount of time, he ended up placing several people in one zone just to finish off the monsters, but they all ended up dying. However, he wonders how they managed to get into this situation against these stinking fishmen. But if, by chance, they manage to be entering from behind in the boys' battle, for sure, they, Jiang Fang, will surely cut the line and will manage to reach the boys. What would happen is that they would beat the boys, but many people will die in this game. Maybe 200,000 people, maybe more. So he yells there to Jin Fang that he needed 30 minutes so that he could kill the boss. Then he wondered, how many creatures, how many fishmen were still alive on the battlefield? He would then check this little thing, but checking, he realizes that there are many monsters in front of him. But at this moment, we see something happening. Several daggers go in a specific direction, but these directions were towards the boys. One of those daggers pierces, automatically defeating that creature. Our protagonist, for having killed that, ends up gaining a point there, a point that he could distribute in his system. Behind, the 2 people from his team see her asking Jiang Kai to run. As out of nowhere, several monsters decided to appear. They should get out of here as quickly as possible, but he said that now he couldn't be leaving because leaving now would be wasting time. As now, the battlefield seemed to be a little more balanced at the moment. But if no one stops this group of sea fishmen, for sure, this will lead to the failure of this whole battle. Even if here, the Huang family is totally his enemy at the moment, he doesn't deny one thing, which is that he wouldn't be so sad to see this Huang family lose this battle. But another comments on what he just did. But then, right now that it's over, he should be kind of proposing a new idea. Even with 200,000 people by his side, they were at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, Jiang Kai closes his eyes. Another one ends up taking his job and starts smoking. But our protagonist calls for Huang and also Hao. He tells them both to be quiet, because now he will not be leaving. the two stay behind, wondering what will happen to him if he moves forward. But Jiang Kai moves forward, because he needed to finish off these fishmen as quickly as possible, and if by chance they don't want to be fighting together there with him in this battle, they can leave. But Jiang Kai will be fighting alone against these fishmen, leaving the two with their mouths open. Meanwhile, we are cut to the battlefield, where the fishmen were having a grotesque victory against the humans. The humans are each ambushed, some even giving up on the battle, unable to do anything more. The strongest one was also standing still. He didn't know what he was doing anymore while he was down. Others comment that if they couldn't kill this boys, they would die, but if they died here, they would be unable to enter the game for a month. He has a family and children to take care of. They don't want to die in any way. This is the only way to get money for them. But the captain said, no, they will not run, because 10 minutes have already passed. And if by chance, they didn't notice it was that in 10 minutes, monsters would appear again. And here they look in another direction. The direction where the monsters should appear in 10 minutes. At the moment, they begin to create theories about who would be the guy who was doing this cleanup of the monsters from behind. Since the one family didn't prepare anyone strong to stay behind killing the monsters, so who would this unknown person be? Then he ends up discovering that there must be an extremely powerful hunter behind the scenes. He must be fighting alone against the group of fishmen. While they talked about this lucky and strong guy, who was fighting against the monsters, we are cut to him running. While some monsters followed running, he ends up unintentionally stopping, because now he needed fighting with his dagger in hand. He prepares for the battle from now on with his dagger held in hand. He advances towards those fishmen. Quickly he manages to take down some of them. Here after killing, he makes his triumphal entrance, saying that these fishmen were nothing. But the scene is cut to another person from his group, who was running, saying that Jiang Kai killed 2 elite monsters twice. She doesn't have the strength of Jiang Kai, so she screams for help, so that Jiang Kai would appear there and help her. Since this was the weakest one, it only had the ability to be drunk. So running towards Jiang Kai with several monsters behind them, we see Jiang Kai passing by the two. Now he asks his group to rest, so they manage to attract a lot of elite monsters to one place. The two still wonder if Jiang Kai could handle all of this. Well, killing 1 or 2 alone is not normal, but now killing all of this was normal, and now advancing. We observe several monsters advancing towards him. So in fact, he does have some difficulty killing some monsters, but now he will have to find out for himself if he will be able to or not. Well, he didn't even need to resolve this doubt. Since Jiang Kai was killing these monsters one by one, the two, frightened, saw that our Jiang Kai was a different guy than they were imagining. The explosion ends up happening in the background, catching the attention of the Huang family group, who quickly look in the direction where they saw the monsters, but out of nowhere, each monster was disappearing. He also just hired military personnel to be here. How did they manage to get here so quickly? Quickly, he mounts his horse and starts running in the direction of that explosion. While running towards our Jiang Kai, we cut here to Jiang Fang, who was still fighting against the boss. Finishing the boss's life, we see the boss getting increasingly irritated. The group of extras was just smiling there, saying that his current life was at 65%. What he needed was to quickly finish off this business.